a very warm welcome to the Gimme a Hug Yeah Wrestling podcast. My name is Anne, and today there's some news that we've seen a lot of people on YouTube talking about, but I don't think anyone's that I've seen has really gone in depth on the actual allegations that have been made, and it's pretty harsh. Okay, so this is a trigger warning. It was at the start of the video. We'll probably have to do several throughout. I do want to hear your comments. I have someone handling the comments on the backstage on StreamYards, so we can talk about this. But just be warned, like, to just keep it cool in chat. Everyone's going to have a different opinion on this, and there's going to be different sides. And eventually, a jury is more than likely going to hear this, unless they can sweep it under the table with money or what have you. Ultimately, you know, you could be a jury member. You can make your decision on what's being presented in this filing, which could impact a court case. Okay, so I wanted to sort of go into it in sort of detail and discuss it. But again, there is some really serious allegations in this, and whether they're true or not is for you guys to sort of decide. And we can absolutely talk about it. We will be having breaks where we talk about it. If you've got any questions or you want to hear opinions, then we absolutely can. And all opinions expressed in this are absolutely my own. So let's get into it. We are actually going to go through the full court case. So this is the class action lawsuit, which has been put in by Janel Grant, who is the plaintiff. We are going to be finding out more about Janel as we go through this and see her situation that she has found herself in, and the allegations that have been made to do so. So it's Janel Grant, and it's versus World Wrestling Entertainment Inc. That's the World Wrestling Entertainment Inc. Vincent McMahon and John Laurinaitis, who are the defendants. So she is going against WWE, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, and John Laurinaitis. There are other people mentioned in this report, and we'll get into it as we go. They've generally given generic names. However, we can safely assume that one of them is Brock Lesnar, based on the description. But I'm sure we'll get into that later. So we're going to go through it all as we go. So the plaintiff, Janel Grant, by and through her undersigning counsel, hereby files the complaint against defendants, the World Wrestling Federation, Vincent and John Laurinaitis. An introduction to the case. Plaintiff Janel Grant is a former employee of WWE who is the victim of physical and emotional abuse, sexual assault, and trafficking at WWE. Ms. Grant is filing this lawsuit not just to address her own suffering, but also to act for those who are afraid to speak out. So a very clear indication there from the first point that this isn't just Mrs. Grant doing it for herself. She also fears that there's other victims involved who are not speaking out at the moment and wants to go through with this case to be able to move it forward with other people and get people to come out about these allegations. And if these allegations are true, guys, they are absolutely freaking horrific. Okay, absolutely horrific. WWE's billionaire founder and executive chairman, defendant Vincent Kennedy McMahon, lived in a penthouse duplex in Mrs. Grant's apartment. So what we're getting here is an introduction as to how these two met. Okay, the two met in March 2019 when Miss Grant was dealing with profound grief and struggling financially. After devoting years to around-the-clock caregiving, her parents passed away. On top of that, she was unemployed and her family home was lost in her parents' bankruptcy. Now, I've talked to the lads about this in the group chat, and I was talking about grooming. Grooming is something that we normally associate when we're talking about adults and children, but any vulnerable adult can also be classed as grooming. And to me, in this description of Mrs. Grant, which would all be factual in terms of her parents did die, so I don't think there's any sort of question on that, as well as the bankruptcy, that will all be provable in court. After her family passed away, Mrs. Grant dedicated herself to finding gainful employment. Neighbours in her building provided career advice and sought her assistance with personal events. Mrs. Grant used these non-paying roles and volunteer work in the community initiatives to build her resume. So obviously being left with nothing, being left with huge debt, Miss Grant was there trying her best to make a life, continue her life. The building's resident manager wanted to help. She messaged McMahon to ask whether he would talk to her, sharing that Mrs. Grant had been through hardship and would do great things if given a fresh start. McMahon enthusiastically responded, "Hell yes." Now, this again is a bit of an opinion, I guess, in the actual case that's been mentioned, because this wasn't put in by the residence manager. I assume that the lawyers have evidence that the resident manager would be happy to talk about this in the case and sort of provide evidence that this did happen. McMahon befriended Mrs. Grant, giving her hopes of a new life and promises of a yet-to-be-determined role at WWE, and showering her with attentions and assurances, along with gifts like a VIP experience at WrestleMania. But what seemed like a dream in the spring of 2019 quickly became a nightmare. So there we get to see that Vince McMahon has give her gifts, okay, and they again will be provable in court. The accusation says that she has he's given her promise of a new life and financial support as well, so that what sounds like Mr. McMahon was trying to make her dependent, and this is the sort of start of the potential grooming that we are seeing. As McMahon dangled career-making and life-changing promises in front of Mrs. Grant, he demonstrated an increasing lack of boundaries. During several meetings that were ostensibly about a potential job at WWE, he greeted her in his underwear, touched her, repeatedly asked for hugs, and spent hours sharing intimate details about his personal life. McMahon warned Miss Grant to keep their closeness secret, lest rumors led to public trouble, and added that while he protects loyal people, he had world-class legal resources on speed dial to deal with people who become a problem. Now, this accusation here is talking, it's gaslighting 101, really. He's saying, look, I can look after you, I can keep a secret. However, if not, I have the backing to be able to destroy people. That is at least the accusation. Do write your comments in chat. I am interested to hear what you think about this. As such, when McMahon pushed Mrs. Grant for a physical relationship in return for long-promised employment at WWE, she felt trapped and in an impossible situation, submitting to Mr. McMahon's sexual demands or facing ruin. So this is just the introduction, and we do later on in the report hear some of the allegations which are being made. Mrs. Grant feared she had everything to lose and faced negative consequence no matter what happened. This lady is saying that at this point she felt trapped because of the situation that she was in and the grooming that had happened. After succumbing to the pressure for a physical relationship, Miss Grant was slotted into an entry-level position as an administrative coordinator, a position McMahon created for her in WWE's legal department. So she did work for WWE, and she began that role on June the 17th in 2019. Mrs. Grant remained in that role with the acceptancy of a temporary relocation to the XFL. Later on, we'll find that she did request a full transfer, which was denied to the XFL, until McMahon verbally directed her to transfer to the Talent Relations Department, reporting to the second defendant, John Laurinaitis, on March 9, 2021. During a conversation the same day, McMahon explained that her presence in the legal department was effectively delaying efforts to hire a new general counsel for the company. McMahon and Laurinaitis informed Mrs. Grant that she would be promoted to Vice President of Operations in the Talents Department, providing her with an organizational chart reflecting this. And when we talk about that promotion, that was a promotion that was looking at like £200,000 financial gain to Miss Grant as for getting that job. So obviously there's huge sort of financial rewards being given. This lady is in bankruptcy after losing her two parents, and there's promise of this happening. Shortly thereafter, they informed her that they needed her to begin at a lower level as a director, but promised her promotion to vice president after a 12-month period. Despite Mrs. Grant's expression of unhappiness and attempts to end the sexual relationship, and while she came to understand McMahon expected the physical relationship to continue as part of her employment, she had no idea how sordid it would become, nor how the psychological torture and physical violence would leave her feeling helpless, isolated, and trapped. Okay. That's some big allegations right there, talking about someone that's manipulated a situation and talking about someone who feels trapped because they've become dependent on that person. In March 2020, McMahon began sharing sexually explicit photographs and videos of Miss Grant, including pornographic content he recorded, while other men, both inside and outside the company, including the members of the television tech team, executives, producers, and world-famous athlete and former UFC heavyweight champion, with whom WWE was actively trying to sign a new contract. This is where they are mentioning what we all assume to be Brock Lesnar. Okay, so she was used in part of the bargaining for getting Brock Lesnar, and we learn later on the expectations of Miss Grant's what Miss Grant was expected to do to help sign Brock Lesnar in his new contract. Given McMahon's dominant position at WWE, cohesion was inherent in his increasingly depraved sexual demands. Specifically, while Mr. McMahon was CEO of WWE and Miss Grant was employed as an entry-level coordinator in the legal department, McMahon recruited individuals to have sexual relationships with Miss Grant, and two of them directed Miss Grant to visit defendant Laurinaitis prior to the start of work days for sexual encounters, and expected and directed Miss Grant to engage in sexual activity at the WWE headquarters even during working hours. We hear a lot more about that later on in the report. I want to sort of read through the introduction, everyone, and then we'll sort of go into some of the details. We'll scan through it. All this time, McMahon ordered Miss Grant to keep their relationship secret unless otherwise instructed, including lying to maintain whatever cover story he had fabricated. McMahon's assurances that Mrs. Grant was safe and independent rang hollow in light of his efforts to isolate her from friends and attempts to chip away at her identity until it was replaced with his desired role for her to be his bitch, his fantasy, and or his porn star, while occasionally intermixing softer descriptors like girlfriend, baby, even love when convenient. People like this, man. People like this who are playing with people's emotions by making them two different things, by giving them hopes of being something that they want, and then at the same time degrading them in a fashion like this is just wrong. Okay, it is wrong. McMahon also subjected Mrs. Grant to, and this is all alleged as well. Okay, we do get some evidence in this case, including messages that were sent from Vince to Miss Grant. McMahon is also subjected to extreme acts of cruelty and degradation that caused Mrs. Grant to disassociate or become numb in reality in order to survive the horrific encounters. Was one example of Mr. Mann's extreme depravity, and trigger warning, this is nasty. On May the 9th, 2020, he defecated on Mrs. Grant during a threesome and then commanded her to continue pleasuring his friends with feces in her hair and running down her back. While McMahon went to the bathroom, showered off. Upon his return from the bathroom, McMahon and his friend actively resumed the threesome, which lasted over an hour and a half while Mrs. Grant remained covered in Mr. McMahon's filth. When Mr. McMahon's friend left, McMahon ordered her to stay to continually to sexually gratify him. This is part of the reason I wanted to make this video, because I don't think people are talking about the horrific allegations. That is horrific. If that was something that she was not accepting of, which I would suggest by the fact that she has written it as part of this court case, I'd say that she was unhappy in that situation. And I can't get that image out of my head, to be perfectly honest with you. In June 2021, McMahon and defendant Laurinaitis sexually assaulted Miss Grant inside Laurinaitis' offices and WWE headquarters while colleagues were busy at their desks. Behind a locked door, the two men cornered her and pulled her in between them, forcibly touching her before ultimately putting her on top of a table in between them. She begged them to stop, but they forced themselves on her, each taking turns restraining her for the other while saying, "No means yes, and take it, bitch." In that statement there, she's clearly saying that she was saying no, and they were not only saying that they acknowledged her no within that statement, and turned it into something else that said yes. That is very clearly rape. Okay, you cannot do that whatsoever. So she is accusing McMahon and Laurinaitis in that situation to have been raping her. Unsurprisingly, others at WWE knew what was going on, and we'll talk about that a bit later on. But instead of intervening to protect Mrs. Grant, WWE actively sought to conceal the wrongdoing. When this all came out first in February 2023, I believe, is when the payment, which we'll get into later on, wasn't paid to Mrs. Grant, which was part of her NDA agreement. This all come out. Vince McMahon actually, WWE and Vince McMahon failed to pay what was agreed in the NDA agreement, which actually makes the NDA valid. Okay, the disclosure agreement invalid. Others knew about it. Vince McMahon, later on in this report, says that he was showing it off to people, talking about what he could do to her, talking about what they could do to her, talking about what he could get them to do, get her to do for them. That is trafficking. Okay, that's a serious thing. This become not just in this allegation, Mr. McMahon's plaything, but also giving her to other people as theirs as well. And this is a real human being. Okay. And at the time, she felt like she couldn't say anything because she was under severe financial pressure to be able to do out. And she was afraid of facing the consequences of revealing it. Unsurprisingly, sorry, I've said that. In January 2022, McMahon told Mrs. Grant that his wife had found out about their relationship. So now we're going to hear about the end of the relationship. Purportedly to avoid divorce, negative publicity, and other repercussions, McMahon said that Mrs. Grant's time at WWE was at an end, but he wanted her to sign an NDA to ensure her silence, among other things, his personal misconduct. In the days ahead, Mr. McMahon put Mrs. Grant under immense pressure to sign, saying that refusing would not only jeopardize the McMahon family and the company, but that she'd become a public headline, suffering reputational ruin, including from the pornographic content McMahon had captured and that he had pressured her into sending, and face McMahon's legal resources. And we all know McMahon has a lot of money. There's a fear that he can make things like this disappear. And right now, this is not disappearing. This has come out. And this is a hugely damning report. Conversely, McMahon reassured her that a signature would ensure his continued support and protection and safeguard her reputation. Ultimately, Mrs. Grant succumbed to the pressure and signed the NDA in exchange for payments, which McMahon later stopped making. He didn't continue making the payments. There will be evidence of that from what was legally signed in the NDA, and the money has not gone into her bank account. Mr. McMahon, by not doing this, has failed to come to he's failed to continue with the NDA agreement, which then makes it null and void. I would assume. I'm not a lawyer, right? But he has failed to do that. He has failed to continue with the agreement, puts him in breach of it, which means that NDA is null and void, which is why we are seeing this right now. And let me tell you, one of the things that is going to come out of this case, I think, because I suspect, unless they can make it disappear, this case will go to court, is if there's a huge thing about pressuring someone into signing a non-disclosure agreement when they are emotionally unstable or broken, or the pressure is put on at a very vulnerable time in someone's life, is it right to be able to make someone sign a non-disclosure agreement? I ask you guys, people that are listening right now, do you think that is right to make someone sign an NDA? There's other cases that we've heard about with NDAs, right? NDAs, because I don't want everyone to listen to this and think that every NDA is indicative of this. A non-disclosure agreement can be done for many different things, generally to protect that person from a negative response from people. But it could be that they don't want the wife to find out about an affair. It could be anything. Okay, an NDA doesn't necessarily mean this person has done wrong. It could mean that they want to hide something. So we can't just use the term NDA and look at this and go, that means this person was doing that. Okay, and that's really important, I think. Even after pushing Miss Grant out of the company and muzzling her with an NDA, McMahon continued efforts to exploit her, including attempting to traffic her to a WWE star who would be in New York City for a live event and a TV taping in 2022. It doesn't mention who that star is. Understandably, defendant's predatory conduct has left Mrs. Grant crippled, both physically and mentally. These symptoms led to her termination from her subsequent job, running her building's operations due to her inability to leave the home for weeks. This poor lady has been suffering from in silence. She's afraid to go out. That this is her accusation, that it has severely affected her mental health. And that's what monsters do. Despite McMahon's promise of reputational protection, WWE appears to have leaked information that led to the public disclosure of her name by a media blogger who cited a source in #WWE with direct knowledge of the situation, which, upon information and belief, was an overt intimidation tactic at Mrs. Grant. So there's an allegation there that WWE have intentionally leaked the information to scare Mrs. Grant, for her name to get out there. Sorry, I'm not really. I'm looking at the comments. Dan's going to bring up some comments in a minute after we sort of get through this introduction. But fun. Welcome to the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. This reads like a script from a horror movie. So sickening. It is. It sounds like, you know, the serial killer allegations and stuff like this, the sexual predators of all cases. I've read cases like this before. It's disgusting. It's disgusting, and it does read like a horror story. I agree with you, Fun. A really good comment there. We will get up some comments in a minute. I just want to get through the introduction, and then we'll take it from there before sort of scanning through the thing. So this is basically an introduction, and there's evidence in here, and we will read later on some of Miss McMahon's text that was sent to employees within the company as well as her, and we can see the allegations that she's making. In this capacity, Miss McMahon publicly affirmed her commitment to doing everything in her... Oh, sorry. Okay. I've missed a bit. An important bit here. An important bit because it upsets me, right? WWE has also attempted to sweep the matter under the rug. Following media reports that McMahon was involved in hush money payment scandal, WWE released a statement in June 2022 to announce that a special committee of its board of directors was investigating the alleged misconduct and appointing Stephanie McMahon as interim CEO and interim chairwoman. Okay, so we know about this. We heard about this in the reports in 2022. We heard that WWE was doing an internal investigation, and we have heard WWE doing an internal investigation before. Right, I mean, I'll get it out there because it annoys the hell out of me. The whole thing with Velveteen Dream, okay? Patrick Clark, who was accused of misconduct and grooming. WWE did an internal investigation, and it was either at a press conference or at a video package. I think it was a press conference. It must have been a press conference. Triple H stated that the investigation found nothing of cause. The investigation that didn't even approach the victim to ask for opinions. Companies that use their own internal investigations to sweep things under the under the table need to be accountable. WWE is a huge company. Internal investigation should not be a case. It should be an external investigation. It should be something that's paid for by WWE to make sure that their staff are safe. In this capacity, Ms. McMahon publicly affirmed her commitment to doing everything in her power to help the special committee complete its work and to implement its findings. She also declared the importance of a safe and collaborative workplace. All great sounding PR thing. Notwithstanding the public statement, the investigation was a sham. That is in the allegation here. In November 2022, WWE touted the conclusion. So they said, we have finished the investigation of the special committee investigation into the misconduct. Yet the special committee never even bothered to interview Miss Grant or request any documents, despite Miss Grant stating that she would cooperate. This company has done an investigation of harassment within their workplace, and the person who is alleging the allegation, the sexual misconduct, has not been bothered to be interviewed. This is the exact same thing that I've read about with the Patrick Clark case. And that annoys the hell out of me, because companies should be taken to rights on this. They absolutely should. If they're doing an investigation, in my opinion, they should be posting that. They should be posting the investigation so that they can see the outcomes of it. The special committee, importance of a safe and collaborative workplace. That was what this investigation, I've highlighted it, was there to find. Yet none of that was mentioned. Okay. In SEC filings, the company tried to divert attention away from McMahon's abuse of women by focusing on the technical issue of how the hush money was accounted for. We heard a lot of reports at the time about hush money that was not being accounted for. And what this report is saying is that was to drive people's attentions away from the sexual allegations which are coming out from Ms. Grant. Immaterial accounting errors relating to certain payments that Mr. McMahon agreed to make during the period from 2006 to 2022. Through all this trauma, Miss Grant has endured profound suffering in silence, feeling of exploitation, loss of security, and the fear of facing the wrath of WWE and McMahon's army of attorneys if she was to come forward and bring light the egregious acts detailed herein. And we will get into some of them egregious acts. That time has passed, and Mrs. Grant seeks to hold defendants accountable for their reprehensible and unlawful acts for her sake and for others. Miss Grant seeks declaratory judgment that her NDA is invalid under federal and state laws and asserts claims over other laws, including the Trafficking Victim Protection Act. Mrs. Grant is saying that it was Vince McMahon that didn't pay the money, that was part of the NDA agreement, and that is why she can come forward, but also stating that there is protection laws in place that she's going to argue against in a court of law. I mean, this could be massive. If she wins this case, if she wins that the NDA was not agreed upon lawfully, if they say that they did it under duress, which is what she's claiming, then that means that anyone else that has an NDA out against them could potentially come forward. Okay. There we go, the parties. So before we go into that, I want to get into some comments. And thank you all for joining me. This is a really difficult subject to talk about, and I've sort of wanted to go into it properly because I saw a lot of people making videos and not sort of showing this document, which is the document which has gone into a court of law. Okay, so this is the accusation, and it's up to them to defend it. And there's certain facts within that you can't deny, in terms of like her parents dying, in terms of she will have been working for WWE, etc., etc. So we know that there is something to this. I'd say whether or not the allegations happened or not is for a jury to decide. Okay, but again, once again, juries are made up of people who are like me and you, who are reading it, and both sides will be able to present evidence to both of these facts. There's not much evidence in that. That was just an introduction. There was no evidence that we've seen that says that Vince McMahon didn't defecate on her during a sexual act. That evidence might come out later on. I don't know. But this is the court case as it stands at the minute. This is what is going to happen. I want to say hello to everyone, and thank you so much for joining me in chat. There's going to be difference of opinion in here, and I understand that, and I respect that. But I do appreciate you hanging out, and we'll try and answer any questions. News coming out is that Triple H and Stephanie knew but kept it silent. The Cure, welcome. That is the that was said in that introduction as well. That was said that there was a the special committee, board of directors, to investigate the alleged misconduct. That happened, and that Stephanie McMahon was named as the interim CEO and a chairwoman. So Stephanie McMahon wasn't necessarily in charge of that committee. I think that's important to note there. Let's have a look. Thank you for your comment, man. Let's have a look. Surely Triple H and Stephanie should have reported it. There was lots of people that will be named in here who potentially knew about it, who should have reported it. It's not cool, right? It's not when you see something like this, and I hope like you just hope that people can see the people are just good, right? But they're not all the time. There's allegations in this of people being shown this sort of content and footage and joking and laughing about it. They're in some of the allegations later on, and that's wrong. Thank you very much. Vince is completely insane. If these are true, he deserves to rot in a cell in my book. Well, a jury will find out, and both sides will have chance to provide evidence. We know that McMahon's legal department is massive. This might not even end up going to court. I don't know. They originally planned for it to not go to court by making Miss Grant sign an NDA, which was then in breach. Okay. I feel sorry for you reading this out. It's beyond horrific. Thank you, Jack. The issue is, the thing is, I was watching a lot of videos, and there was all being very respectful of it, and I respect their opinion on it. I have no ties to the WWE, right? I have no ties to any company. This podcast is an independent podcast. We can have our own views, and I wanted to bring it to light to you. I wanted to give a video where we can talk about it and ask questions about it and give our opinions on it. Okay. What I don't understand is no one else in WWE didn't try to stop it. Mate, me too. But Sassy says a really good point. It's because of facing consequences from Vince. If these allegations are true, then we can see that he's using his financial support, he's using his company to hold it against people. So people are afraid to speak out about the boss, but no one should be afraid to speak out about anyone when they're doing something that is illegal. Okay, and this if these allegations are true, it is illegal. The scary thing is how many times this has happened previously that we don't know of. An interesting point, Jake. There are several NDAs in place. Okay, there's several NDAs that we've heard about, multi-millions of pounds. I think, was it 23 million off the top of my head worth of NDAs that WWE were talking about in that case, or something like that. There is other people in this. Vince, by not paying in that, has broken the NDA. And also there are other trafficking victim acts. If this jury, if this goes to court and a jury finds that she signed an NDA under duress, then what is to say that every other person who has an NDA against them from Vince McMahon was signing an NDA under duress? And that's going to bring out a lot. If Janel, even if she wins, even if she doesn't win on the evidence side of things, even if she doesn't win the case on the other parts of the case, if Miss Janel Grant wins based on that, the other people might have more evidence. It's big. It's big. If I was TKO, I would do everything to completely get rid of Vince. Yeah, I mean, well, I would have done a long time ago, really, based on the allegation in the first place. But if someone said something, they probably would have lost their job. So they kept quiet, which is pretty sad. It's a horrific position to put people in when they feel powered. And I talked again about grooming, about this lady was in a vulnerable position. She was a vulnerable adult in the position when she allegedly met Vince McMahon. She just lost her parents, which will be a fact. And the allegation is that Vince McMahon came with promises of financial support after facing bankruptcy. And yeah, that's how he groomed her for his sexual advances that we'll hear a bit later on, which are horrific. Persons do this and have done it many times and not received consequences. It's sad. It's sad that all this is coming out, and people should not get away with it, whether they are like me and you, right? Whether they're sat at the computer, just trying to get on with their lives. If I was to do it like this, should not get away with it, man. Should not get away with it whatsoever. It's wrong. And if they did, you should get support to help them bloody understand that it's wrong. It's wrong. The allegations in this are wrong. I'm not saying that they're true. I won't say that they're true because they are allegations, but there's a lot to it. Okay. This will damage WWE. It certainly is. It certainly will. NDM reform can be a good thing, but gets the most attention as a tool to get away with something. Absolutely. NDAs, and because when we associate an NDA with something like this, we see the horrificness of what was trying to be covered. An NDA can also be for other reasons. Okay. So an NDA doesn't mean that these horrific things have happened. An NDA means that two people want to stop something being talked about. That's the basic reason for a non-disclosure agreement. Okay. It doesn't necessarily have to be just a really bad thing. This reads like a script from a horror movie. Anyone involved in protecting Vince should be removed. I don't know how they're going to get to them people. Maybe more. There's a couple of people, that parties that are mentioned, which aren't actually given named. Maybe them parties will be named later on as we go on to read. Just wanting to ask if you're aware people are demanding Brock Lesnar and Vince McMahon be removed from the upcoming 2K24 game. I wasn't aware of that, mate. A really great question. I think it's probably too late. Unless it was to block them off in a day one patch or something like that, I think it might be too late because that game will already be in development. That game's development will be finished, I would assume, with it being out in like 3 months' time. From my little knowledge of the gaming industry, I believe that games go to like a gold period about 3 months before the release. And that's kind of the end product of the game. They start producing the physical media, they start doing all of that. And then that's part of the reason we're getting day one patches, because people are finding issues with stuff and then updating it as a day one patch, which is why day one patches. If anyone knows more about that, if Sam's here, he'll certainly be able to answer that. People should not assume that Vince is guilty. I agree, Penelope. I agree. However, at this point, we only have one side of it. Okay. And he will have an opportunity to defend himself if this does get taken to a court of law. I agree. And that's a case that we'll be watching, I'm sure. Thank you for coming in with a different, with another opinion. I appreciate it, Penelope. Last night, a lawyer weighed in that Vince could get criminally prosecuted if more people come out. Yeah, I think he could get criminally prosecuted with this coming out. It depends how his lawyers are going to handle this situation, I guess. We do have a trigger warning allegation, so please just be aware of that. They went off WWE because of the way they treated China. I don't know if this is directly related to the to China, so I wouldn't necessarily like to say that was involved in any way. Let me have a look. Let's have a look. This could be a class action suit. Yes, it certainly could be. It certainly could be. Rapper says arrest Vince McMahon. Again, I mean, this is an opinion. And from what I've read, like, if these allegations are true, then he should be questioned. He needs to be questioned, is what I'd say. Yeah, the reputation of WWE has been dragged in the dirt. This is not good for them. People saying they pre-ordered 2K24 and they'll be demanding a refund. That's how bad it is. Yeah, I mean, people say a lot of stuff as well when it comes to stuff like that, Mr. Alex, and don't necessarily. I'm sure 2K24 is going to sell really well, regardless of this case or not. Will it get less sales? Potentially, but I think it'll be okay. Does that make sense? I didn't know allegations could affect video games as well. I think it's a collective, you know. Do people read this and have an opinion of WWE? And people, the only way to really go against anything like this is to speak with your wallet, you know. So if people choose not to purchase a video game because they believe it would be supporting people with like Vince McMahon, who to this point I believe is still with the company, whether he's been suspended or not, I'm not entirely sure. Fun. That's a good start for people to let WWE know this type of behavior is unacceptable. It is 100% unacceptable. If this behavior is true, if these allegations are true, it is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. What worries me is Vince has so much money, he might find a way to get away with it. He might do, but even this report in itself is damaging the cure, is what I'd say. The DA could bring charges. They absolutely could. This could be taken out of their hands completely, you know, with these allegations. I quite often don't believe allegations against famous people without proper evidence, because sadly some people make false allegations for money. But here I am actually inclined to believe there is. Well, we know that Miss Grant worked for the company. Okay, we know that she was in the company. We know that there'll be evidence on how she met Vince McMahon, which had come out at trial. And there's also evidence even within this, which we'll get into in a minute, which includes text messages and stuff like that. So all of this will come out at court if it is to go to court. And it's a brave thing that this lady has done. A very brave thing that she has done. Her face is out there in the same way that Vince McMahon, in her allegations, said that her face would be the profile of this. That has happened. Okay, her face is out there. A quick Google search will, and she is going to be the face of this, and hopefully she'll be the face of the person that can make sure that this doesn't happen again. And even if it turns out to be false, that safeguarding measures are put in place to ensure that nobody can get away with this. No boss, nobody can do this. This is what we want in society. You know, this is why we have laws, because we want people to abide by them. And these are breaking the law, okay? If the allegations are correct. Who do you think is winning the men's Royal Rumble? There's a stream happening later on, Jason. I'm not really going to talk about wrestling right now because I don't think it's really appropriate. We're gonna carry on with this, and then there'll be a stream later on tonight that you can watch for that sort of thing, mate. Lawyer in the US did a live stream on YouTube last night saying that if Janel Grant succeeds, more people could come forward and Vince could end up with a criminal prosecution. That is exactly what I sort of said. If the NDA, if she proves in a court of law that the NDA was signed under duress and therefore invalid, then if there are other NDAs, which have been reported, if there are other NDAs, then they can all come forward and say, I signed this NDA under duress. Could be very dangerous as well. Could be very dangerous for others outside of this case who have signed NDAs for the right reasons. Okay, so we also have to be aware of that. It's going to be difficult for a court to go ahead with this. Some truth, not meaning all of it is true, but some of it must be true. Well, it might not be. It could all be fabricated, but there's a lot of details in this case. If it is fabricated, it's very detailedly fabricated. And don't forget, this isn't the case. This is just putting it forward in the first place. This is big. Does anyone find that after thousands of shoot interviews about Vince by people that hate him, none of this was ever mentioned? Not saying it isn't, but it's odd. I think people have come out in the past and said it, so I would say there is that. people are afraid as well. People are afraid. But we shouldn't necessarily make judgment on that, I guess. If this goes to court, the case will supersede the authority of TKO. It certainly will. How do we fact check these accusations? He said, she said. The problem here, Chris, great comment, man. Really appreciate it. So the way that it fact checked is it goes to a court, and a jury decides, and it listens to both sides of the evidence, and that's what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to see this happen where you have a jury of peers who decide, a jury of the people that make up your nation, because it would be a USA court appeal, a jury of peers who make up that nation, that understand the legal ramifications of what's been doing. They listen to the evidence from both sides and they make a judgment and punish the people accordingly. That's how the legal system works. And that's what's great about having a legal system as well. I mean, not all countries have a legal system like that. So fingers crossed. It'll be to the jury. It certainly will. Do you think this is affecting Stephanie and the rest of the McMahon family? Of course it is. Of course it is. It's affecting everyone within that company at the moment. And hopefully, at the end of it, there could be some positive outcomes from it, including the way that safeguarding is handled within the WWE. Because if these allegations are true, then it is not being handled correctly at the moment. If Vint is guilty, then we should all boycott WWE and watch AEW instead. I think the problem with that is it's the cure. And I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all you being here. Is that people will watch what they want to watch. Okay, people find entertainment in WWE and AEW. I certainly do. I find enjoyment in both of the products in different ways at different times. I prefer one. Doesn't matter which I prefer. What matters is that we do, and I don't think that boycotting the full company is necessarily the way to deal with it. What really needs to happen is this needs to go to trial, or at least that's what I'd like to see. So do we have to rely on testimony to decide guilt or innocence? I think we need to be presented evidence to decide guilt or innocence. These are all accusations at the moment, and yeah, testimony, evidence. There are text messages in this. I will get into it. There's been a lot of really great chat. I encourage you to carry on chat. I want to carry on talking about the document for a little bit, and because there's lots more to get into, and I'm just aware that we are running out of time. So let's breeze through a little bit of this. So the parties who are included is Janel Grant, a Connecticut citizen, a former employee of WWE, having worked there through June 2019 through to March 2022. The other party is Vincent Kennedy McMahon, who we all know. Defendant, the World Wrestling Entertainment, so the WWE as a broader company, is also included in this as a defendant in this. The other defendant that's named is John Laurinaitis, an Arizona citizen, the former head of talent relations, who was officially dismissed in August 2022 after allegations of misconduct by women in WWE had come out. So it's going to be very interesting to see if this does go to court about, because a lot of John Laurinaitis being firing and them allegations could come to light. Why was John Laurinaitis fired? We don't have an official statement from that on WWE, I don't believe, or haven't seen one. Please let me know if I'm wrong in chat, and someone post it up. Great. At all times relevant, WWE. Right. So these are non-party officers and employees of WWE. These are names that are not going to be named within this report, but are mentioned. Okay. So let's say one of them is a boss. Instead of calling it by name, because that person could then be targeted because this has been made public, etc., etc. Talk about these in various ways. So one of them's WWE corporate officer number 2, one's corporate officer number 1. These are people that worked in WWE. Corporate officer number 3, corporate officer number 3, and the WWE superstar is a professional wrestling superstar who performs at WWE banded events during the time of Miss Grant's employment. McMahon signed the WWE superstar to a new booking contract with WWE. The individual referred to herein as WWE superstar. So in my understanding of this, by not naming these people, it doesn't sound like she's going after them people. However, what we read earlier, by seeing that he's a former world champion and a former UFC world champion, we can deduce that the WWE superstar mentioned here is Brock Lesnar. Okay. So Dakota's jurisdictional action, I don't really know that. Factual allegations. So again, this is allegations. Okay. Mrs. Grant's induction to McMahon turns into a 2-hour meter between a potential entry-level employee and billionaire. So this details how Miss Grant was struck with grief after losing both of her parents. Her parents passed away, and she was struggling. So this goes into more detail about what the introduction was talking about. Okay, and we'll stick on the points that are sort of serious allegations, I guess, and sort of the parts that we need to read. Mrs. Grant's closest friend in the building was a resident manager. That's who introduced her and McMahon to each other. She texted Mr. Defendant McMahon in the case, he could assist, and texted him to see if he would be willing to speak to Miss Grant to provide advice about employment. I would assume that the text message could be provided as evidence if the resident manager is supporting Mrs. Grant. And I'm sure that the lawyers have already asked the resident manager whether she is willing to testify against Vince McMahon or not. And we'll see, but it could be declared by court order that they need to hand that in anyway. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Just saying, these are just my opinions and understandings of it myself, okay? McMahon responded enthusiastically, proposed to meet time, so they had a meeting. Mr. McMahon is big on energy. She should talk to him no differently than anyone else. Is what the resident manager said to Mrs. Grant. On March the 23rd, 2019, Miss Grant arrived for the meeting in McMahon's condo with additional printed copies of her resume, a black notepad, and thank you cookies. Went there with good intentions. When sitting at the dinner table, Mr. McMahon looked at Grant's resume, complimented her communication skills, common sense. Before discussing the personal lives, Mr. McMahon was talking about the hardship, the family. The Mrs. Grant told McMahon about the hardship that led to the parents' loss, her family's bankruptcy, and other trauma that led to financial independence to ensure that she would never experience losing her home again. So she's gone to Mr. McMahon and she said, "This is what I'm going through. Can you help?" Okay. McMahon shared stories about his upbringing and traumatic childhood, so he's getting on a level with her. Okay, getting to saying to her that he was in a similar situation once. Talks about his separation with Linda McMahon. Described her as an ex and long gone. At the end of the meeting, Mr. McMahon told Mrs. Grant that he didn't want to give her a job, but give her a life, and he would find her a place at WWE. Mrs. Grant was obviously stunned by this. She was facing potential bankruptcy. It was a difficult time for her, and she was appreciative that she'd been given this olive branch. Not necessarily, and the allegations are that the olive branch was given with special conditions. Mr. McMahon said he'd get the ball rolling. He offered her to be a guest at WrestleMania, which was something Mrs. Grant said that she'd never done before. Also sharing... Mr. McMahon advised that her office would reach out and set up a meeting with the trusted official, which was WWE corporate officer number 2 at the WWE headquarters. After asking him which cell was the best number to reach her, McMahon shared his personal phone number. Let's get through this because there's a lot of stuff here. McMahon arranges for Mrs. Grant to be hired by WWE. So we've heard about how they met, or the allegations, Mrs. Grant's version of how they met. And now we're going to talk about the start of beginning to groom her and sexual exploitation. Once again, this is not nice to hear about. Okay, so please, like, if you're upset by it, I have put links below to also support. If there's any of you that feel that you've been through any of this and need to talk to someone, or you know someone that has, there's links in the description to talk to someone to help you out. Okay. Once you're right, so let's go. So this is about them meeting. During the meeting, McMahon described a surgery he had on his knee by touching Mrs. Grant's leg and drawing a line where the surgery had place with his finger. Once again, the start of physical interaction there from Vince McMahon, talking about rehabbing his injury. Got a tour of his condo before hugging him goodbye. Again, whispering, feels so good is what Miss Grant accuses him of. Miss Grant went to WrestleMania later that day. Vince talked about the meeting that she had with Corporate Officer 2. She was saying how good it went. She commented on the dinosaur skull that was on Mr. McMahon's office wall, prompting the response, "By the way, if you're a bad girl, the T-Rex will eat you." Followed by, "Seriously, Janelle, whenever you land in WWE, you'll be a credit to the organization." Is it right for a boss to be texting someone? And this is the allegation. "By the way, if you're a bad girl, the T-Rex will eat you." It could be a harmless joke. I mean, it's your opinion on that, I guess. She was VIP at WrestleMania. Over the next several weeks, McMahon invited Miss Grant to his condo on several occasions, each time assuring her that he'd find her the right position. So she kept going to these meetings to find her the right position. Miss Grant brought job examples, job descriptions that she'd found online to review. She wanted to get a job for the WWE. She wanted to get out of a financial hardship. And Miss Grant asked her question. He listened to Miss Grant, asked her questions, pointed out qualities he described as rare gifts, including goodness, vivaciousness, childlike innocence, and the ability to be vulnerable, all things that made her a target. So in this section of the allegations, she's saying that these are things that Vince was saying to her, which were positive at the time. Okay, she'd set tech goodness, childlike innocence, and stuff like this as positives, whereas actually these are things that she's later come to realize was actually making her an easy target. McMahon was initiating long embraces, telling her that he trusted her and he could be himself with her. Let's go through here. This is all about their building up of a relationship, a friendship, if you like. We see that he started rubbing the upper back of Mrs. Grant. 2 days later, he was contacted about further meetings. Let's go down here. Sorry, I'm just sort of scan reading this so we can sort of come out with the stuff that I think you guys need to hear about. When it's rated, okay, cool. So here we go. Mr. McMahon stood up from his chair, knelt in front of his chair where Miss Grant was seated, blocking her from standing. This is as Miss Grant was about to leave the condo. He leaned close to Miss Grant and told her to kiss him. Miss Grant paused and gave McMahon a kiss on the cheek, to which McMahon sighed, "That's not what I meant." After McMahon walked off to his bedroom and said he wanted Miss Grant, she swiftly rejected his advances and tried to reason with him that he was putting her in a bad position. At this point, she's saying she rejected his advances. Miss Grant pled with Mr. McMahon to stop and think about what he was doing. McMahon repeatedly begged to simply hold Miss Grant. Then this situation was seeing that potential grooming taking place. Okay. Out of fear of her employment, this is the accusation, and his earlier implied threats about his legal team dealing with problems, Miss Grant lay down in the bed next to McMahon and kept her hands clasped and ankles crossed as she was quizzed in saying that he could only hold her but nothing more. So she said to him, "You can hold me," and that's it. Miss Grant tried to make small talk. He said that she should watch Monday Night Raw. After she agreed, he forcibly kissed her and began pulling down a strap on her sweater. Miss Grant then sat up, said she needed to leave, and had a lot to process and left. Okay, that's again all accusations, not the truth, but this is the accusations that has been put forward by this case. Miss Grant watched the show and texted McMahon. She was shocked when he appeared on the show, texted him in the middle of the broadcast and said, "That was a very nice message, made me smile." So again, we know that McMahon did come out on Monday Night Raw on that date. McMahon texted Miss Grant saying that she'll have a job in WWE by Friday. So he did go and get her a job. There's a lot of stuff here about difficulties that she was having in the office, that things were all a bit people in the office were treating her differently. It was like people didn't necessarily know what was going on, so we'll just skim over. She thinks that people knew what was going on. McMahon touted WWE employee number one's loyalty, saying the employee would be able to protect Miss Grant, and led her to his bedroom while giving her the command of "Please don't stop this." During the encounter on May the 18th, 2019, Miss Grant felt coerced into engaging in sexual activity. Felt coerced. Okay, so that means that she didn't agree with what was going on. Okay, but she felt that she had to for a job and for the financial integration. She feared adverse career and personal consequences in legal retaliation. In the accusations, he's already said, "My legal team is strong. Okay, my legal team is strong and they're coming after you." McMahon stated, "This is what I've been waiting for," as he performed oral sex on Mrs. Grant. Mrs. Grant asked that protection could be used, and McMahon responded that there was no need to worry about it because he was clean. Let me tell you, if someone asks for protection, then you should absolutely do that. Feeling that she was being used for his gratification, Miss Grant went numb and was unable to make eye contact. So this doesn't sound, in this accusation, that Mrs. Grant was enjoying this herself. Okay. Mr. McMahon then flipped on his back and said, "Okay, jack him off." Disturbed by the non-consensual sexual encounter, she hoped McMahon would cease in his advances, but advances continued and left to fulfill his demands or lose her job. Let me read that again. But his advances continued and left her to fulfill his demand or lose her job. Although we haven't been told in that Mr. McMahon said you will lose your job if you don't do this. So he could argue in his defense that he thought her that this was consensual. So a difficult thing, I guess, to prove. On June the 16th, 2019, the day before starting with WWE, Mrs. Grant attempted to shut down any further physical contact or sexual encounters by admitting to McMahon her unhappiness and concern, starting her first ever job in a legal department, no less, while having a physical relationship with the CEO and chairman. She requested that they ended the physical relationship. McMahon refused, saying that it was not ended, it did not need to, and he did not ever envisage it ending. He told her that it just has to look legit. Miss McMahon spun the conversation, told Miss Grant to focus on the positives, embrace life. Let's have a look down here. Miss Grant, so we're moving to section C, so let's go through some questions. The next section is on Miss Grant's WWE career commences, minimal work, and an absent boss. But let's get your opinions. Hi, Sam. Lovely to see you. Thank you for joining the chat. Slim Jim are considering pulling their sponsorship of the Rumble. Their relationship with WWE has lasted since the early 90s at least. Huge financial consequences. I wonder how the stocks have reacted to this. If anyone can find that out for me, let's hear it. Evidence is everything. Opinions don't matter a lot. Absolutely. I'm waiting for Tony Khan to start tweeting on this matter. Chris, it'll probably happen, unfortunately, and he probably shouldn't. WWE may possibly be overlooked or frowned upon. I hope this does go further. I hope it sets a standard for not just this industry but everywhere else. As much as I love AEW, I wouldn't want everyone to just turn to AEW because of the situation. No, absolutely. I wouldn't. If you don't already watch AEW, then it's not for you. It's different than WWE. It absolutely is. I'm not saying necessarily punish either company, and I don't like the tribalism with wrestling at the minute. So let's not. I mean, I'm going to watch a Rumble and enjoy it, and I watch AEW a lot. I wonder if Kevin Dunn retired because of this coming to light. Interesting thought, Eddie. Really interesting thought there. Stocks have gone down. This is Dan mentioned it for me. Stocks have gone down from 88.51 to 85.90 at the minute. I did ask for someone to find out, and I have no idea what to do with that information. But interesting point, my friend. Thank you so much for finding that out for me. Someone can probably tell me that it's going down. Probably not a good thing right now. Okay, people are losing their trust in the WWE stocks. Okay, will WWE fans boycott the WWE in response to this development? There's several things that happened before. Certainly with the Velveteen Dream thing is what I'd use as an example that put me off the handling of the WWE in that situation. So I'm sure there will be some fans that do respond to that, and you can tell that from the stock market dropping as well. Let's not forget there's a difference between Vince and WWE. 100%. 100%. Vince is the person. WWE is the company that is being held accountable in this point. And it sounds like WWE's major sort of role in this is the potential of concealing it and not being forthright in the investigation. But the evidence will come out of that if it goes to court. Royal Rumble preview tonight has your notes. Can't do SmackDown tonight. I have a day. Oh, nice, Sassy. Ant said these are allegations, not facts, not until a court of law declares them as such. So will Vince be erased by WWE if he's found guilty? Ooh, tough. I don't know how they will handle it. It's like Eddie says, no matter what WWE do, Vince's name will always be tied to the WWE. It will always be tied to the WWE. He didn't create the company, but he turned it into the global mega star it is. This is a bad way to kick off WWE 2024. I agree. I understand that. I will watch the Royal Rumble with the talent and workers not involved with this, who do not deserve this for all the hard work. That is a great point, Eddie. There is a lot of great people who work in WWE. Not all power corrupts, okay? And there are people going out there to entertain and be entertained by that. I will be watching the Royal Rumble as well, my friend. I read the NBC article on Janel Grant. Her lawyer says that she has trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Yeah, that comes down later in the report, and she's saying that the reason for this is because of the allegations that she's made. And thank you, Mr. Alex. I really appreciate that. Careful with reading the text messages and more brutal details due to YouTube's guidelines. Mate, I needed to check YouTube's guidelines. I didn't. They'll be on screen. Sad part is the talent are hostages in this situation. You want to support them, but there is a disclaimer at the bottom. So, I mean, there we go. The talent are hostages in this situation. It's a shame that people have to be involved that are not. So, yeah. That's not true at all. I'm not supporting that behavior at all. No, I'm sorry. I missed half the chat, but I want to get straight into this as well. We need to trust the legal system. WWE is not Vince. The problem is if the DA gets involved, TKO will be investigated to find other parties involved. Also, if women come forward, the WWE will be sued for unhealthy business practices. Yes, they absolutely will. They absolutely will. And I hope that happens, right? And I hope that, and when I say that, I don't mean I'm glad that it's come down to this, but if this type of thing is happening, I hope that the truth will come out. Whoever wins, I hope that it's investigated fully, the truth comes out, and people can start having confidence in the product, in wrestling as a whole, because this is damaging to all of us as fans, okay, when stuff like this happens. So let's hope that the truth does come out. Let's hope it. I mean, I honestly hope this goes to court. I honestly hope this goes to court so that the evidence can lay bare. It can't just be wrestling fans fighting, saying, "Oh, I believe Vince. I believe Jeanette." It doesn't matter what we think. What matters is what a court of law thinks based on the evidence that they are presented. Okay, and this is the start of that. This action case that has been put forward. This is why we're reading it. This is why I don't just want to cover it and say, oh, Vince has been a naughty boy, there's these allegations. I want to go into depth on it, right? I want to talk about it. That's what we're here for, okay? And I also want you to understand, when I have opinions of Vince in the future, this is where it's coming from, because I make an opinion, as all of you will make an opinion, as the jurors will eventually end up making an opinion, okay? Jurors are, it's not a big way thing. Jurors are people like me and you. Whether they're fans of the product, whether they're not fans of the product, they will listen to the evidence and decide whether the evidence that they have qualifies what is happening. If these allegations are true, Vince McMahon has broken the law. Probably go to jail. Okay? If the jurors find there's enough evidence to support this, Vince will end up in a really bad position. If they don't, okay, if they don't find him guilty of this, then maybe we need to see the evidence. We need to see the case. This is the first part of the evidence. This is why I wanted to present it to you, because I don't think enough people on YouTube are talking about the actual report that's gone out. Okay. A lawyer on Pro Wrestling Unlimited has mentioned that Vince's past allegations and assaults and trafficking won't be stuck to the statute of limitations. Interesting. I'm not a lawyer, so that's a really great point, Alex. Thank you so much. It can certainly be introduced, as Sassy says, as part of his character, but also it doesn't mean that after this case, that'll be all. Once again, what we talked about before, the NDA was broken by Vince, okay? That is part of the reason this can go this far, because she did have an NDA on her. However, when Vince didn't pay her, he didn't agree to the terms of the old NDA that he'd set up. He broke that agreement by not paying her. In that case, she is no longer under an NDA. She can speak out about this, and this is what she is doing with this lawsuit. Okay? Hope that all makes sense to you. I need to pee. Let's go through a little bit more, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much, guys. I'm aware there's loads more, guys. I might go on a bit later than half 9, mate. I'm sorry. Mrs. Grant career commences minimal work and an absent boss. Mrs. Grant reported to WWE headquarters for her first day of work. So this is about her starting work. I want to sort of go through all this. Not that there's anything that's not thingy. It's merely talking about a difficult work situation where she felt that she wasn't something was amiss. Something was amiss in a position, and people in the office felt it. We'll brand through this. Right, let's go to McMahon's coercive control tactics to sexually and dehumanize Miss Grant. In summer of 2019, McMahon's presence was all-consuming in Miss Grant's glance. In the office, she felt monitored as he was surrounded by allies of Vince McMahon. In the previous section, she talked about the allies of Vince McMahon, which led to continued daily panic attacks. So talking about the issues that she's had mentally. Outside the office, McMahon sexualized her entirely. That's the accusation. He no longer referred to her as a friend and largely stopped talking to Miss Grant outside of sexting and fantasy talk. Any non-sexual text related to life and or work were either ignored or given token responses like okay or you. Again, that's an opinion, but could be backed up by evidence when she supplies the text in the court case. As detailed herein, Mr. McMahon was adamant about having Miss Grant send him explicit photographs. So this is important. Impressing upon her that it was part of her sexuality. Given the control that McMahon had over Miss Grant's employment, she felt compelled to comply and sent the explicit photographs to McMahon's mobile device. Okay, so she felt that she had to comply. This is what she's accusing him of. She felt she had to comply, so she sent him them photographs. Miss Grant was routinely assured that the photographs she was providing McMahon were to remain private and was part of their secret world. We later in the report find out that Vince is accused of not keeping them private. Mr. McMahon began to degrade Mrs. Clint, calling her his bitch, while hinting at the fascination with having other people watch them engage in sexual activity. The complaint details encounters during McMahon caused Miss Grant to sustain physical injuries, including bleeding and pain for forceful use of toys, despite Miss Grant's plea to cease any further activity. Once again, saying that she asked him to stop, and the accusation is saying that it didn't. The number of sexual encounters increased, as did Mr. McMahon's physical aggression during them. Notably, McMahon was most aggressive when using certain sex toys named after WWE wrestlers and performers. McMahon named the toys so that the color of the toy matched the race of the wrestler. For example, a black item. I've got to be careful what I can say on YouTube, I guess. A black instrument would be named after an African-American wrestler, and a white toy will be named after a Caucasian wrestler. In addition to McMahon's infatuation with pretending that other men, and namely certain WWE talent, were in the room with them. This was yet another incremental step in desensitizing Miss Grant to his fantasy, and eventually demands that she perform sexual acts for or have sexual contact with others in WWE. During a David versus Goliath type wrestling match in 2019, Miss Grant shared the thoughts of the event with Mr. McMahon, and Mr. McMahon then used that in the bedroom, saying that he named one of his toys after the smaller Ramsey and attempted to sexualize the situation, diminishing her input, or at least she felt like it was diminishing her input. Yes, Sam, I've got that. You can do. You absolutely can do if you want. It's up to you, man. It's up to you. It's pretty harsh things. By the fall of 2019, sorry, that's just Sam on the back end of the chat. So, McMahon frequently pressed for more explicit pornographic videos, explicit content. Miss Grant expressed apprehension at the request. McMahon said that she could put his trust in him, and that she could trust him, or questioned why she didn't trust him. McMahon also took care to remind Miss Grant of his power and influence, once again showing the power over her. The grip of McMahon on her and replacing her doctor with one of McMahon's choosing. In addition to her panic attacks, Miss Grant began experiencing increasingly severe physical, mental, and emotional symptoms, including sleep disruptions, dizziness, exhaustion, rashes, weight loss, hair loss, and migraines. So all physical symptoms from the abuse or the accused abuse. Miss Grant informed McMahon that the doctor suggested her symptoms were trauma from ongoing stress. McMahon mocked her emotional trauma, my ass. She got a celebrity doctor, which is what the physician is referred to in this report. The celebrity doctor was known as an alternative clinic, and that was somebody that was picked by McMahon, and McMahon was paying the bill for that doctor as well. I suppose there's an implication within this that the doctor was under McMahon's control, but again, that's something that had to be discussed in a court to find out. And I'm sure that if this doctor was called as a witness, then he'd have to. Miss Grant acknowledged having a relationship with McMahon during visits to the celebrity doctor, who gave little reaction, save telling her there were many different paths to God and love. So she did say to this doctor that she was in a relationship with Vince McMahon. Celebrity doctor, lavish treatments and affections. Let's go on to this. Publicly, despite attempts to leave there. The company announced that Frank Riddick, board of directors. Let me just get through some of this because there's not a lot. Mrs. Grant was temporarily relocated to the XFL workforce. She did then apply to remain with the XFL on March 6, 2020. She openly vocalized her desire to remain. But she was denied that from WWE employee number 1, corporate officer number 4, before informing McMahon. During and after this, during which time she finally told McMahon about her explanation, her request was denied. So she tried to get out of it into a different leg of the company to try and be career, but it was denied. The accusation here is that it was from the top. It was Mr. McMahon that said it. She told Miss Grant to play dumb. He began showing explicit photos of Miss Grant to people both inside and outside of the company. McMahon sent a lengthy message to Miss Grant describing the details of the circumstances surrounding sharing. So saying that he's now sharing. McMahon described how the WWE referee left to pleasure himself after seeing the images of Miss Grant. Miss Grant initially dismissed this as fantasy talk, believe McMahon wouldn't actually do such a reckless thing. So there's two people that know that if that happened, it'll be McMahon and the referee. I'm sure there'll be evidence to that in the court. When she voiced apprehension about McMahon sharing naked photos of her with someone she didn't know, McMahon's response was not to confront her, but to assure the rest of WWE, to show her of WWE's referees' loyalty to her. The sharing of exclusive photos terrified Miss Grant, so obviously not something she was happy with, and it illustrated McMahon's sheer lack of self-control and further panicked her into these private and intimate photos, which included her face, were being shared with complete strangers. So once again, that control that she talks about. Again, talking about showing naked photos to a referee there within WWE. Miss Grant expressed concerns that she had no intention of having sex with strangers. Mr. McMahon was trying to push her into that. She arrested Mr. McMahon, made that message clear. She made clear that she did not want any participation of her moving beyond the point of mere fantasy. Let's have a look. So the furlough happened, the pandemic happened. There was furloughs happening in WWE, and McMahon surprised Miss Grant with news that he had protected her from a job, from a furlough that WWE would imminently announce. The furlough affected a large number of employees, and McMahon emphasized that he personally made sure she would not be one of them. reinforcing her dependency on him, particularly after a majority of the support staff in the legal department, all hired prior to Miss Grant, were furloughed. So once again, looking out for them there, or the accusation is that he was looking out for them. Let's have a look. Let's go down here. Mr. McMahon recruits other men and forces Miss Grant into sex trafficking. So this is where it gets really dark. And again, I give you all a warning that this is pretty horrific stuff. In May 2020, McMahon had recruited an individual who he manipulatively referred to as friend to engage in a threesome with Mr. McMahon and Miss Grant. The friend turned out to be McMahon's physical therapist, an alternative clinic, and is referred to herein as physical therapist. So this is another guy that's not been named, or girl that's not been named within the within this case, but it certainly could come in the future. To induce Mrs. Grant's participation in the threesome, McMahon started to refer to Mrs. Grant as the girlfriend, sent a large bouquets of flowers. Miss Grant expressed apprehension about participating in a threesome, so she wasn't very happy about it. That doesn't mean that she wasn't going to go ahead with it. Apprehension can be fear as well. We must remember that. In response, McMahon insisted that the plans were already made and suggested he would lose the friendship if she did not go through with it. On the day of then this is horrific, guys. It is getting really horrific, so just be aware of that, and it gets worse. Miss Grant showed up to the condo, reiterated she did not want to go through with the act. She expressed the fear of being thrown around like a rag doll by them both. She clearly stated she wanted to back out. Mr. McMahon responded by the first time to Miss Grant that he loved her, stunning her into silence. Okay. McMahon's manipulative tactics resulted in an outcome he wanted, and he led her down the stairs to the bedroom where the physical therapist was already waiting to begin the threesome. Early in the encounter, McMahon immediately directed Miss Grant to lay down into a supplicating position. While straddling over her, McMahon defecated on Mrs. Grant's head. McMahon left the shower, but he instructed Miss Grant to remain in place with excrement in her hair. She continued performing for his friend. While Miss Grant requested protection, none was offered. McMahon and the physical therapist continued with the threesome and directed Miss Grant's sexual performance for around an hour and a half while she was covered in feces. That's horrific. That's horrific. That's the accusation, and that's all it is, an accusation, but it is horrific. Following the threesome on May the 11th, Mr. McMahon sent explicit messages. Miss Grant, the furthest details of his fantasies of seeing her engaged in sexual relations. So this is after that happened. And we've got messages in the court report. So this is all part of what will come up as evidence if it's submitted to a court. Okay. I love it. That's you, Janel. You just can't get enough, can you? In the future, it's going to be so bad that you'll demand to be F'd twice a day, and not just with the physical therapist in a three-way. Why not let others see the beautiful, voluptuous body and watch you shake uncontrollably when you ejaculate? They'll go out with their minds. This is hard to read without sort of censoring it. Then I'll find more friends and we'll tie you up so you're helpless. I'll direct them to have their way with you. Who can make you scream the loudest? Maybe I'll just line them up and watch them do stuff to you that's pretty horrific. But that is just a text message, and that can just be a fantasy. And I'm sure McMahon can argue that if them text messages have come from Mr. McMahon. There is a date on there that we can see as well, but stuff like this can be doctored. It's up to a court to determine whether this is can be used as evidence or not. Okay, not necessarily for us to decide, but that's the accusation. McMahon then pressured Miss Grant into several additional activities with the threesomes. She felt she had no choice. There we go. Let's carry on going there. After they began, Mr. McMahon became more sadistic in his fantasies, focused on control, such as choking, sensory deprivation, pain, humiliation, and group scenarios in which Miss Grant was to be physically overwhelmed and subservient. The message is on the screen there. I can't read it, right? I can't read it. It's quite aggressive sexual messaging, okay? And that's That doesn't mean that these things happened. These things can absolutely be written by someone and a fantasy. Doesn't necessarily mean it happened. So let's just keep that in mind. On one occasion, he instructed Miss Grant, do not knock on the door, because if I see you, I will rape you in the hallway. That is right there. That is a part of the accusation. Okay. This is horrific, and it gets worse. It gets worse. Miss Grant sent text to McMahon noting a 1-year anniversary. McMahon ignored her. A month later, McMahon reminded Miss Grant about the far-reaching results of texting out explicit content to her. By now, thousands of men will see you every day. Sorry, I missed all that in chat, guys. By now, thousands of men will see you every day, and they will all want to be with you. Talking about texting out the content, okay? Around this man, McMahon openly shared explicit photographs and salacious stories about Miss Grant with WWE TV crew at tapings. This is a story that is apparently texted by Vince to her, which is where he was sharing the obscene details, showing them images of what was happening in the thing is, and it's pretty horrific. But again, it can just be argued off as evidence as well. It doesn't have to be taken as fact. Okay. Let's have a look at some comments right now. Let's have a little break from this for a second because it's pretty horrific. I'm sorry this is long form. The lads, I said I'd be about an hour, and look, it's took longer. I can't help it. It's a big topic. I wanted to talk about it in detail. I wanted to talk about it properly, and I wanted to hear your opinions. I'm sorry it's taken so long, okay? But I appreciate you all for being here and keeping it cool, okay? If this case is heard in New York or Connecticut, that will be a hard blow for Vince. They love trying these type of suits. Right, okay, cool. So could set new laws, stuff like this, especially New York and Connecticut, sassy informing us. It is the President Biden Speak Out Act under the 117th Congress. Thank you very much, Jack. That is the Speaking Act Out Act, which has allowed this to all come to light. I'm glad you're actually talking about what happened here. Other channels don't talk about it, just want people to go read it themselves. Many people don't want to read all that document. Mate, I understand. I understand where they're coming from. This might get taken off YouTube. I have no idea. I might be putting the channel at risk here, right? And this isn't what we do on the channel. We watch wrestling. We have a good time. We talk about wrestling, and we try and engage in it, okay? But there's some serious accusations here, and I wanted to go into depth about it. Yeah, there's other channels on YouTube that go into it. Look at the Mayo Kowalski case. So there's a lawyer, is a channel I follow that talk about some of the horrific things that happen, and that ended up including moments of sexual allegation as well. So I don't think I'm not allowed to be putting this on YouTube. I think this is just. There's trigger warnings all over this video. I've told people that we're not talking about good stuff here. We are going to go into the depths of what this court order is. Okay? And I'm trying to keep it as unbiased as possible. These are allegations. These text messages that we've just read are allegations. That's all they are. And Vince can just say this was a fantasy. It was a joke. Okay? And it's up to them in a court of law to prove that that's not the case. I don't know the outcome of that. It'll be a jury of peers that decide that. There's a similar case in the 80s where Vince attempted to groom a female referee. Absolutely. We had an NDA. Bret Hart confronted him when she left with an NDA. Thank you. She will be evaluated by a psychiatrist assigned by the court. She certainly will. Yeah. And if these allegations are true, then I'd understand why she'd be damaged. You know? The USA Speak Out Act passed by Biden will render the NDA not it was needed to. Right. Okay, there we go. Great. Thank you for that information, Jack. Evidence is everything that we're reading them. Evidence is everything. We are reading them. But why we're not prejudging until charges are brought? Absolutely. This will be a court case, and it'll be a court case that we'll follow. Look, like I say, on this channel, we normally just have a good time. We watch some wrestling. We talk about the entertainment that is in wrestling. But this is a huge thing that's happening in wrestling that I want to be serious about and I want to bring to light. Yeah. So please, if you've considered subscribing to the channel, it's not all like this, all right? You don't know, Jack. I think Vince will be ousted early as next week. I think so. I think, yeah. I'm surprised none of you said it's already happened, to be honest. It could happen anytime. Careful with the text. I certainly will. To me, he could not look good. Many people may think they are covering up. You are a potential jury member, Sassy. You are a potential jury member. You are fine. There are other YouTube channels that actually read the text messages. Thanks, Eddie. Well, I did put a disclaimer on it, so it should be fine. I need a quick wee, guys. So I'm just going to have to go to toilet. I'm really sorry. We have been going for an hour and a half, and now I want to go through this properly. Okay. I hope you stick around, and I'll be back in like 2 minutes. Okay. See you in a second. Hello, and I am back. Sorry about that. Just nature calls, man. Nature calls, man. Right, should we have got any more comments, or should we get straight into that? We have tried to be respectful without being too graphic on the stream. Yes, we have. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do. Some of this is horrific, right? It's on the screen. You can read it if you choose to read it. Saying it is just saying it in my voice, right? It's not something I want to do because it feels horrific. That's part of it. Yeah. Cool. I hope that's fine. I hope that's okay with you guys. Let's go. Any more comments, please do put them in chat. So let's get back to that. And where's my thing? Dan's gone to film the other video, which is on our channel now. If you want to go join them, guys, if you want something friendly. On the occasion where Miss Grant informed Mr. McMahon that she was physically injured during a sexual encounter, McMahon responded, varied from apologies to non-accountable pushback to blaming impulse control. So once again, controlling her at times when she was saying that she was injured. When encounters were particularly brutal, Miss Grant learned to bookend the truth of her injuries with compliments to create the least amount of pushback from McMahon. However, Miss Grant sustained brutal and painful injuries, including bleeding, swelling, bruising, and spasms of incontinence resulting from Mr. McMahon's forceful use of his fist, adult toys, and objects unsafe for penetration or insertion. Okay. There's an instance here which she talks about an extra large toy that ended up hurting her and ended up getting. It was not meant for insertion. It become stuck in her for a period. She texts while she was in pain and bleeding a lot between last night and today. She texts saying, I'm on the floor right now because I can't get comfortable. And on August 29, 2020, she texted him an update to say that she's still really uncomfortable and I got hurt in some way that I have trouble describing. McMahon did apologize, saying that sometimes I just carried away. Okay. That'll all come up in court. And if that does come up in court again, that would be acknowledgement of it actually happening. So we'll see. Now we're going to get into Laurinaitis and his involvement in this. Okay, so this is really getting into trafficking. We've already gone into trafficking with the sexual encounter with the physician. During this time, Miss Grant becomes so strict from the stress of the situations McMahon had subjected her to that her weight plummeted. So again, having physical responses to the abuse. One distressing event occurred in the 21st of November 2020, where Mr. McMahon drove to the WWE headquarters to fulfill his fantasy of having an encounter with her in an office. Miss Grant suffered a panic attack. She didn't want to do it. Terrified, Miss Grant obeyed Mr. McMahon's directions and they entered the headquarters. Despite her statements that she did not consent to threesomes and the physical therapist, McMahon advertised her to others and told her that he'd found another person to join them, and that is defendant John Laurinaitis. In November 2020, McMahon basically made her make photos and videos to send to Laurinaitis. Presumably, McMahon then facilitated the exchange of explicit content back and forth between Miss Grant and Laurinaitis. Notably, even once phone numbers were exchanged between Miss Grant and Laurinaitis, McMahon insisted that he be privy to any messages that Miss Grant sent to Laurinaitis and demanded that she report back to him about all interactions, further illustrating the level of control he had over Miss Grant. A threesome was arranged between McMahon and Laurinaitis on the 29th of December. McMahon instructed her to tell Laurinaitis that she was a neighbor and girlfriend working in the legal field, but not WWE. Miss Grant asked Laurinaitis if it was the first time that Mr. McMahon had introduced him to a woman. Laurinaitis didn't respond, but looked at McMahon, who quickly intervened by kissing Miss Grant. Okay. Once again, Miss Grant asked for protection. Her request was denied after an assurance that Laurinaitis was clean. Okay. In the days that followed, McMahon tested her, and Laurinaitis hugged me like a bear and said thank you to me about 12 times already. In contrast, Laurinaitis messaged Miss Grant, thanks for the fun afternoon. So that is after the sexual encounter has occurred between McMahon, Laurinaitis, and Miss Grant. She was reassigned to a different legal department, a different person, blah, blah, blah. Let's have a look. The physical therapist and Laurinaitis could have sex with Rebrand. Oh, so this is where McMahon was reported to have started making a schedule for her to have sex with different people. Exactly, baby. He's not the only one. Called me this afternoon, begging to, let's say, be with you. Give me another week. I'll now be ready. I'm not feeling like myself. It's not great, but it's getting better. Tell him soon. Okay, so she's saying there, what she said earlier in the report said that she was starting to make things with compliments. So we can see right there that she's saying no. She's saying no. Okay, tell him soon. It's not great, but it's getting better. I already told him, baby. By the way, Johnny wants Tuesdays, but not this coming one, and the occasional Saturday. But maybe I can shift him to Thursday nights too. If this is true, this is indicative of that sort of abuse. Okay, not seeing her as a person, seeing her as an object. A shift schedule. Jesus Christ. Let's go through a bit of this. Sorry, I'm trying to bring out some of the... I'm just aware how long this video is going on. I only wanted it to be an hour. Miss Grant's television. She engaged with Laurinaitis sexually, both physically and with explicit content. Unfortunately, Miss Grant's transfer to the talent relationship department came with the expectation, both from McMahon. So when she got a transfer for a job, that it was coming under the bravado that she would continue to engage with Laurinaitis sexually. So she was Miss Grant again found herself in an undefined role, except for selling the traffic by Vince McMahon within WWE. So this is, by doing this, by the idea of taking by having her as a schedule. I mean, it's awful. It's a slave. It's awful. Reminded of the connection between the job and role of a sexual... Right, on March 12, 2021, McMahon reminded her of the connection between her job and her role as a sexual object. Let's work hard and play hard too, is what he said to her. Which is fine if it's consensual. Miss Grant was then sent in the mornings to serve him breakfast, which meant engaged in sexual activity at Laurinaitis' hotel room. This happened several times in the report here. He indicated that she should obey Laurinaitis if he wanted to bring in more men. Maybe you should bring in more guys. You take them on, is what he says there. Maybe you can hint that if he knows someone who can be discreet, it might be better if you and Johnny try to try him out first so he can get comfortable with you two before he's introduced to me. Actually, that makes total sense, doesn't it? And again, does it really make sense? None of this really makes sense right now if this is true, but it's pretty horrific. Senior Vice President of Human Resources was fired. I think the indication in this report is saying that he was fired for reasons pertaining to this. So McMahon informed Miss Grant that she'd be given the title of Vice President of Operations within the talent department. That had come with a pay rise. So again, sort of giving her a reason to carry on working within the company and doing as she's doing. Days later, it was backtracked upon, and she said it was going to be made the Director of Operations to avoid suspicion of automatically becoming the Vice President. Yeah, she saying that she'll become Vice President if she spends another year or two in the position. Cool. Not cool. Let's go here. So her base salary was increasing to $200,000 a year as Director of Operations. Okay. She at this point she's working directly for Laurinaitis, who's forcibly touching her. Overtly sexual behavior become part of her daily life when he was in the office. On numerous occasions, she was forced to serve him breakfast, which was what they'd use as the term to sexually relieve Laurinaitis before going to work. These devastating experiences made Miss Grant feel as if she was being pimped out for an object of sexual gratification for a new boss. Upon information and belief, corporate funds from WWE were used to finance Laurinaitis' hotel stays when these coerced sexual encounters occurred. Okay, so in this section, they're saying that WWE were financing this abuse. Okay, not necessarily that they were aware of the abuse, but they were financing it. Okay. So that's just again about Laurinaitis. Let's see what else we've got here. Another text message here. These compliments will keep on coming, baby. Just wait and see. I totally understand being scared of communication and photos. Johnny gets drunk and sloppy and could easily make a mistake that could cost him his job and yours too. Verbal communication is the way to go. That said, have you talked to Johnny about breakfast tomorrow? So actually saying in the message, don't have any evidence around, okay? Make sure that there's no trace is basically what I'd say. If that's true, that's what he's doing. We haven't discussed it at all. It's up in the air. Johnny complained about getting a new phone, and it's just arrived. Truly, I regret that he ever got pics. It's not worth the stressing I'm feeling. I'm done with it. Once again, there, and there'll be evidence on the other side. Once again, they're telling her that she's not happy in the situation. So he's basically put in a position where she's panicking that she'd lose her livelihood. But if John Laurinaitis got drunk and slipped something out, okay, that's what he's saying there. That's the pressure that she was under. Told Miss Grant again she did not want to engage in sexual encounters. I left the hotel with a bad feeling about myself every time. McMahon and Laurinaitis confined Miss Grant in an office. This is horrific. Okay. This is disgusting, absolutely vile, says Crazy Jake. I absolutely agree with you. It's going to get even worse. Well, not even worse. Just this is not good. Okay. And thank you for staying with me. That's a great question from Fat. We'll talk about that in a second, man. God, this is heavy. Okay. Ms. Grant messaged McMahon that due to her work on an important project, she did not want a threesome that week. A threesome won't set me up for success. It'll knock me out. To avoid pushback, Miss Grant offered the following week instead. So she's scared of Vince McMahon. She knows that if she says no, it won't happen. So she's instead found a coping mechanism to deal with it, which is by saying, but we can do it next week. Okay. McMahon and Laurinaitis ignored a plea and brought her into Laurinaitis' office, forcibly touching her and undressing her before forcing her to engage in a threesome on the conference table. This is June the 15th, 2021. And this is really horrific. Okay. Miss Grant pleaded, no, and please stop. When someone says that in a sexual encounter, if it does not stop, it is rape. McMahon responded with, No means yes. No does not mean yes in any circumstance in these situations. Miss Grant again told them to stop. Mate, it angers me. It angers me reading this. Instead, McMahon licked his fingers and penetrated Miss Grant and said, "Take it, bitch." Whilst each taking turns restraining her for each other, Laurinaitis then joined by forcibly putting his tongue and penis into Mrs. Grant's mouth. June the 23rd, 2021. So this is basically a week after what happened, just over 8 days. Around 11:42, McMahon directed Miss Grant in the middle of a workday to meet him on a lower floor. When she arrived, he led her to a private locker room, locked the door, and forced himself on her over a massage table. Later that day, she got $15,000 in gift cards to Bloomingdale's were purchased at McMahon's direction and delivered by McMahon's personal assistant to Mrs. Grant in her office. So after that horrific encounter that we have talked about in 183, and it is horrific, came back, bought her gift cards. Okay, that's the accused, and it is the accused. That's all it is. This might not be true. We don't know that. That'll be for a jury to decide. I've got to keep stipulating that, okay? Because this is a horrific story, and if any part of this is true, it's freaking horrific. On multiple other occasions, while Miss Grant worked under Laurinaitis, including after McMahon's promise the one-on-one encounters would end, even after his wife moved across the country to join Laurinaitis. I believe his wife at the time was Nikki and Bree's mum. Someone, I can't remember her name. Margaret? I think Margot? She used to work for the company as well, briefly. He would call Miss Grant to his office, lock the door, unzip his pants, and instruct Miss Grant to perform oral sex. So after his wife had moved across the country to join him, he was still using her sexually. That's the allegation. Through all this, Miss Grant noticed that he was less sexually engaged with Laurinaitis. This work, she'd said, fearing herself in the future. Miss Grant asked whether Laurinaitis is still supported her promotion to... So she's been promised the job of vice president, and Laurinaitis has deflected the answer about considering all other options before changing the topic. The extreme uncertainty and fear for her future exacerbated Mrs. Grant's personal symptoms of illness, including gastrointestinal issues and vomiting. We can see that the issues are getting even worse now. It's having a physical effect on her body. Okay. McMahon uses Mrs. Grant as a sexual pawn to entice a world-famous wrestling talent and keep a WWE superstar under contract with WWE. Before we get into that, because that's going to talk a bit about Brock Lesnar, let's go through some comments. Let's see what questions you have. Let's see if we can talk about anything, and let's see what you guys want to hear. I mean, the podcast is for you. You know what I mean? So yeah, let's have a look. You're fine. Thank you, man. King of Wacko, mate. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us again. Really crappy circumstances. Slim Jim cutting ties with WWE, TKO, and other promotions dropping as well. 100%. Yeah, this is an advertiser's nightmare, man. Stuff like this, allegations like this. It's really going to take a big hit on the company, and that's why we've seen the stocks drop in WWE. By about 0.5 today, I believe it was. No, not 0.5. 5 points in total. It was from 89 to 85, I believe, at the end of the day. Or also, it was earlier in this podcast. Some John had gone from the Rumble, maybe WWE. Distance so any major sponsor wants to be away from this at the minute. Now major sponsors are out. TKO will need to ask them. Crazy stuff. The rise and fall of WWE, TKO. Very crazy stuff. Absolutely. Horrific stuff, man. Horrific stuff and terrible treatment of an individual if this is all proved to be true. I take WrestleVotes is credible. I don't know. And this is why, like, I heard the story and I was looking at clicking on some YouTube links and I was like, no, I can't do that. I don't want to hear opinions. I need to read this report. And so I went out and got a hold of the report and read it before listening to any opinions or anything else. And even me reading this report to your parts of this report to you is going to be biased in the way I feel. This is why I say the views are all mine, you know, make your own judgments up on this. It doesn't necessarily mean it's true. That's what I'm trying to say all the way through. These allegations, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true. Okay. This is disgusting, absolutely vile. 100% agree, Crazy Jake, and thank you for joining me. I'm sorry it's such a heavy stream, man. This isn't what we normally do. Is it too late for Netflix to back out of the WWE deal? I don't know. If contracts have been signed, I'd say probably not. There might be clauses within the agreement, but I don't know. I don't know is the answer. I don't think it'll back out of the deal now the contract's been signed. But then there's a question, and this is mad. But look at the John Hopkins case in the taking care of Maya case that's just happened. They were awarded at court. The Maya family estate was awarded $240 million from suing a hospital. $240 million. Okay, and that's been taken down now after sort of several more steps in the case. $240 million, or roughly 232, something like that, in Florida as well. So that hits the hospital bad, you know. And part of what their case was saying was that this is going to affect patients and stuff like that. If a jury wants to punish a $1 billion company, a jury can punish a big company. I'm not a lawyer, but there can be limits put on financial repercussions that are set out. But there's also a way to go past them limits if it's seen that the abuse is worse. And it could all be taken in relation to the company as well. And this is a $1 billion company. So I don't know. What I'm sort of saying is, if this was to come out, if the press from WWE was that bad, then they might not have to back out of the deal, because this could kill WWE. And I know what you're saying. It's a $1 billion company. It's got loads of money. It has got loads of money. But these are major allegations. This is going to take a hit. And if the stock market loses confidence in WWE, then there is that potential. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm not saying I think it's going to happen. I'm saying there is potential for WWE to be severely punished financially because of this, not just because of its reputation, but because of direct fees given out by the court. What's the word for it? It begins with A. I'm not a lawyer, man. I'm not a lawyer. Thank you for giving this, bro. I'm looking forward to watching more of your content that does not involve this terrible situation. Thank you, man. I love wrestling, and I look forward to chatting with you all. Eddie, it's been great having you here, and I appreciate it, man. I subscribed. I'll be coming back to know your takes on the Royal Rumble. Let's hopefully have a more fun night tonight. That's just part of the reason I wanted to get this out of the way tonight. Dark days in WWE, indeed. John Laurinaitis also married to Nikki and Brie Bella's mum. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Thank you, man. Surviving Vince McMahon, unfortunately, that is the way this is reading. Happy birthday, Mercedes Monet, who turns 32 today. Happy birthday to Mercedes Monet. I just talked to people on the 2K Games fan Discord. An allegation has an effect on their upcoming 2K video game. People are not pre-ordering, or they want a refund. Well, there you go, man. You did say that it affects sales. It absolutely could, and that is exactly what I was saying about if this goes to court and the allegations are public, it'll be a big trial in a similar way to the Weinstein stuff has been coming up. People will be talking about it. People will be look at the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial that was hugely public. Now with media, a lot of cameras are allowed in court, and it becomes something that people become really interested in. People will be interested in this. There'll be a lot of discussion about it. This is sort of the start of the discussion. And, you know, my first attempt at doing anything like this, talking about this in a sort of serious way, and keeping it unbiased as we can in a victim's case, you know, or an alleged victim. Okay. Forever, WWE TKO will be remembered as a company built by a sick individual. 100% there to say, yeah. Sad to say, yeah. If these are true, it will be remembered, yeah, and it will affect them. It will affect the stock and everything. Cora Jade has had successful surgery on a torn ACL and comes back soon. Well, there's some good news. There's some good news in all this. Let's get back to the report. This is now where we're going to be starting to talk about a WWE champion who is under contract negotiations. It's implied earlier on. It's always mentioned as WWE superstar. It's implied that this WWE superstar was someone who they was trying to rehire in the contract, and was also someone who has won a world title in UFC. Most people are deducing from that that person is Brock Lesnar. Okay. WWE superstar is famous worldwide, top talent with WWE with a large collective fan base that helps generate viewership and drives in-person attendance, all of which enrich WWE and Vince McMahon. I feel like before I go into this, I'm just going to mark this page. It's 38. I feel like we should just go to the top to remind us what it says about WWE superstar, because I don't think it says it directly relating here. The parties involved, okay? Right, is this where it says about the WWE superstar? Right, yes, here we go. So, section number 42. WWE superstar is a professional wrestling superstar who performs at WWE branded wrestling events. During the time of Miss Grant's employment, McMahon signed WWE superstar to a new booking contract. This individual is referred to herein as WWE superstar. So where's the part where it says he UFC belt? Oh, I feel like we've read it, but I can't go through it all. I'm gonna have to carry on, guys. We'll carry on. It might come up again, but it definitely mentions. I'm sure it mentions the UFC belt at some point. That's why everyone's assuming it's Brock Lesnar, and that is just an assumption. Again, we can't take that as fact. And I've lost where I was. I forgot what page I was on. Yeah, I've marked all this up. Let's go. Upon information and belief, McMahon began to recruit the WWE superstar for a sexual encounter with Mrs. Grant while she was still a coordinator in the legal department. By July, McMahon informed Miss Grant that the WWE superstar would be their next playmate. So saying that this WWE superstar would engage in sexual activity with both of them. As in other instances, McMahon described his fantasy of seeing Ms. Grant engaged in unmerciful sexual acts with a WWE superstar, during which he would rip her open. Okay. McMahon also confided to Miss Grant that he wanted to have WWE superstar under a new contract, while WWE superstar indicated an interest in return to other professional endeavors. Observing it would have to be Brock Lashley. Brock Lashley never fought in the UFC. Yeah, and Brock would have been under contract at this point anyway, unless it was a new one. But it's kind of implied. Is it implied? He began to recruit the WWE superstar, so he can't have had a direct contract with that. I'm sure that if you look at these dates, guys, you can find out what pay-per-views that was. You can find out which WWE superstar come up. It's been pretty noted that it's probably Brock Lesnar. McMahon also confided to Miss Grant that he wanted to have WWE superstar under a new contract, while WWE superstar indicated an interest to return to other professional endeavors. On July the 12th, 2021, McMahon directed Miss Grant to create personalized sexual content for WWE superstar. Okay, so Mr. McMahon is giving the order to Miss Grant. This isn't the WWE superstar telling her to do that. Let's be aware of that at this point. McMahon shared the photos with WWE superstar and then informed Miss Grant that he likes what he sees. I think that's part of the reason the WWE superstar isn't named, because I don't think she's going after him. Not that it hurts the reputation if it is Brock Lesnar. Mm-hmm. McMahon flew, caused other superstars to fly into a jet, a business dinner. Oh, so he's asked the superstar to fly in as well as a sexual encounter. The dinner was supposed to be a talk of that. Prior to the business dinner, WWE superstar made a brief visit to Miss Grant's building. However, WWE superstar did not return to the building for a sexual encounter because he was too intoxicated and taken back to the plane. Okay, so there was no sexual activity at that point. Okay, this is again nasty stuff. So just bear that in mind. Later that evening, after McMahon recounted the story about his dinner with WWE superstar to Miss Grant, he sought to salvage the night with a request that they role-play a sexual encounter, in which Mr. McMahon acted as if he were the superstar. McMahon was so physically rough with Miss Grant during this encounter that Miss Grant begged McMahon to stop numerous times, including loud cries of "Help, I'm serious and I'm scared." And he, among other things, penetrated her, fisted, pulled her hair, pinned her, shoved her, open palm slapped her. McMahon's assault caused Miss Grant to break down weeping, getting into a fetal position with her arms pulled up to protect her face. McMahon alternated between slaps and shoves before admitted, "I'm really messing you up. I'm really messing up with you right and left tonight, huh?" McMahon forbade Miss Grant from leaving his forbade Miss Grant for leaving his condo that night unless she could verbally assure him there wasn't a problem and everything between them was okay. After that, he wants her to stay. He had no effort to check on her well-being after she left the condo. SummerSlam happened. That night, McMahon texts Miss Grant a reminder that she was an enslaved object to him. "I want to drive you lower and lower, so you might beg me to sell you." McMahon continued to advertise a sexual encounter to Miss Grant with WWE superstar during a new formal booking. This is part of what Vince said. "That's your turf. She'll be ruined after me. Leave your ass." Oh, so basically, banter between Vince and the other superstar, saying that Vince's tool won't fit after he's finished with her. Okay, it's not the way we talk about human beings. In December 2021, McMahon gave Miss Grant's personal cell phone number to WWE superstar and promised she'll do anything requested of her. The WWE superstar revealed a fetish to Miss Grant and tested Mr. McMahon's promise that she'll do anything with a request that she send a video of herself urinating. Unable to recognize herself, Miss Grant went numb and obeyed. Superstar informed Miss Grant if she had not complied with the request, the superstar may have lost any interest in her and then called her a bitch. Not the way we treat human beings. I have no issue with the like. If you send videos of yourself urinating, if that's in a consensual way, but like the way this is described in these allegations is not that. The same month, superstar expressed to Miss Grant his desire to set a play date and have a sexual encounter. A snowstorm changed and then COVID-19, so it didn't happen. Okay. Right, so this is getting towards the end now, guys. Thank you for staying with me. I do appreciate you all. In early January 2022, he distanced himself from Miss Grant, agreed to speak with Miss Grant at his condo, said that his wife had learned about him. She was going to make he added to that a public divorce would make Miss Grant a headline. So at this point, he's trying to distance himself from her. McMahon told Miss Grant that if she left WWE and signed an NDA, he was confident Linda McMahon would not divorce him. He could remain in the condo and Miss Grant would avoid reputational harm, once again putting it on her. So regarding the NDA, Miss Grant asked McMahon, "Is this when Jerry sends the papers?" McMahon nodded and assured Miss Grant they would be in the driver's seat to iron out terms together, but she'd need an attorney, so she got herself an attorney. Mr. McMahon had another sexual encounter, but it seems part of the course these days. Where this is going. Before Mr. Grant returned to counsel, McMahon discussed the amount of money that would be exchanged if the NDA settled on a lump sum of $3 million. After Miss Grant told McMahon his initial offer of $1 million was not enough to compensate for the lost earning potential and the fact that she would be unable to continue the promised career trajectory of vice president, as well as failing to last as a director for a full year. Okay, so Vince said, "Here's $1 million." She said, "No, I want more." They settled on $3 million. 2 hours of talking, men, and reading, but here we are. Before Miss Grant retained counsel, Mr. McMahon called Miss Grant with an update to inform her that the WWE insisted on installment payments. Installment payments is interesting because it does play into something later on. Okay, so he wasn't just going to pay a $3 million straight off. He was going to pay a $3 million in different installments. When Miss Grant responded that this reasoning did not make sense for a billionaire, McMahon insisted that it was not his idea. Once again, with the doctor, he continued to engage in sexual text messages, encouraging her to send explicit photo to the WWE superstar. I mean, mad when you're doing NDAs and this is happening. NDAs, the negotiations of the NDA were brief, only lasting 8 days. the NDA ought to address people who know about the relationship, but not including but not limited to WWE corporate officer number 1, corporate officer number 2, Laurinaitis, and McMahon's personal assistants. So in saying that the NDA shouldn't just be about them two, if this is a problem, it should include these other people. So while they went to incorporate the list of individuals, they were rejected by McMahon. Okay, so she wasn't able to get them as part of the NDA as well. It was just between her and him. Who reverted to the original draft rather than incorporate any of the proposed changes, with the exception that as of the execution date, Miss Grant would not speak of their relationship. Okay. Again, this is all about pressure that McMahon was forcing to get the NDA sorted, get it out, get it done as quickly as possible, saying that there's pressure to get it done. Miss Grant became so overwhelmed, she has to simply give notice. Without the need for payment, even offering to sign a napkin or post it as a sign of goodwill. McMahon flatly rejected her desire to back out. So she was basically saying, I don't want to sign an NDA. I just want to leave. I'll write it on a post-it. And McMahon said, no, we are signing this NDA. Okay. On January 27th, 2022, just 8 days after Miss Grant had hired an attorney, McMahon left Miss Grant a lengthy audio message explaining why they needed to go through with the NDA, pushing her to hurry up and sign the NDA, advising that it would be double fucked if she did not. Presumably referring to both his divorce and the board of directors. Don't forget, this is where stuff started to come out about Vince McMahon. There were unresolved edits that left to panic phone calls, including an attorney confidentiality clause and signature line that Miss Grant's counsel said he would never sign. Also, the deadline to sign the NDA was pushed up from January the 31st to January the 28th, really sort of pushing through with this NDA. He reassured her that nothing would change between them and she would emerge with a reputation intact if she would just sign the NDA. In a state of mental defeat and fear from McMahon's threats, Miss Grant succumbed to his unrelenting pressure and signed the NDA just before the deadline. Okay, so this is the statement, which is where she is saying that she was under duress. By saying that she was in a state of mental defeat and fear of his threats, she's saying that she was in fear. She was under duress when she signed this. And this is part of what the court case is coming out for, and the reason that they can as well as part of the NDA. It says that Miss Wires was wired the first $1 million as a first installment, $10,000 to cover the attorney fees. She was put on notice that she was leaving. Let's have a look if we can see. Okay, so after the NDA was signed, McMahon, wearing only a white robe, met Miss Grant in his condo to review outstanding business items. As Miss Grant was proceeding to the door to leave, McMahon grabbed her arm before she exited and commanded her to do one last thing and get on your knees. As Miss Grant knelt to her knees, barely a few feet from the front door, McMahon opened his robe and ordered her to eat him. McMahon grabbed the back of Mrs. Grant's head and slammed her face into his crotch a couple of times until she gagged and pushed him away, telling him to stop and that she couldn't breathe. McMahon responded that she wouldn't get away that easily and held her head as he forced himself back in her mouth until she had no air. Miss Grant tried to push him away, but he held her head firmly in place and loudly commanded her to look up, followed by, "Take it, bitch." They momentarily made eye contact before Mr. McMahon's force caused Mrs. Grant's body to convulse and retch with tears streaming down her face. McMahon then released his hold, closed his robe as he stood up. After leaving, Miss Grant never saw McMahon again. That is horrific, if true. That was the last time she'd see Vince McMahon after all this abuse, continuing to degrade her in that way. McMahon called Miss Grant to advise this would be the last time she'd hear from him. She's probably happy about that. His personal life had blown up, so this is obviously when all the stuff had started coming out within the company as well. He also instructed Miss Grant to continue in having sexual relations with other men, including WWE superstar, in the meantime. Yeah, that's what he's instructing her. WWE messaged Miss Grant that he was in New York in line with McMahon's orders. Miss Grant texts WWE superstar explicit picture. So this is after she's out. After she's out, there's still this happening. WWE superstar reached out to Miss Grant again. Miss Grant interrupted these back-to-back advances as an indication of McMahon's continued control. On March, received a call from McMahon's attorney, advised to be an anonymous email about the relationship between Miss Grant and McMahon and Laurinaitis. Later, in June-July 2020, stories were published regarding the matter of McMahon, multiple NDAs with various women associated with WWE and others. Miss Grant did not receive another payment under her NDA in February of 2023. There was supposed to be a payment. It didn't happen. If that is true, then Vince McMahon has breached the terms of the NDA agreement. Further, despite assurances from McMahon that he would cover her medical care and costs, tax liability for the $1 million payment, McMahon has refused to cover these costs. McMahon continued to pay Miss Grant's medical care until April the 15th, 2022, so 2 months after she left the company, when it abruptly ceased. So this is talking about gifts given to the plaintiff. That's kind of the majority of the case, guys. Let's get some chat going on. If you have anything to ask, we'll do that, and then we'll go through the gifts that you give her and stuff like that, which will all be part of the evidence of the trial if it goes to court. Okay, let's go. Thank you so much, everyone. I know this is horrible stuff, but yeah, sad day indeed. Breaking: Trump has just been ordered to pay $87 million. That's just now. To me, this means Vince won't be bulletproof. I don't think he'll be bulletproof for this. We've spent 2 hours going through the full case, really. There's 20 more pages to go through, but it's kind of a lot shorter, so we'll fly through that. And I think it's important because this is why I wanted to do it, guys. This is why I've took the time to do it, because there's so many podcasts talking in generic terms about this. And I wanted to read you what was written on this piece of paper. Yeah. Not saying it's fact. I'm not saying this is fact, but what I'm saying is if this is to go to a court, then a jury of peers need to decide whether these are facts or not, and whether the both sides present evidence to say or not. But these are the allegations, and these are horrific allegations. We need to be sensitive to that. Is it Brock? Yes, I'd assume so. It would have to be Brock Lashley never fought in the UFC. Yeah, there we go. $83 million. That's the Breaking Trump. Thank you. Observing stuff could be Riddle, but don't think his contract was running out. Was Riddle ever champion? No, I'm sure it says champion somewhere in here, but I can't see it. Dude, well done on this video. Thank you so much, Jack. I appreciate it, man. It's a hard thing to talk about, but I'm glad everyone's kept it cool in chat. I appreciate it, and sorry for not sort of. I can't do 5 things at once. You know what I mean? Right. In case you're interested, gifts that she received. Clinical medical care, Clubhouse, WrestleMania private full day transportation premium gifts, 2,000 non-Stroff gift card, Godiva. I don't even know what Godiva is. Lady Godiva? Oh, I think it would be Godiva, won't it? Examples of items received in 2020, $20,000 towards surgery. Don't know what that surgery was. But I'm sure it'll come out in the thing. Again, these are all expensive items. £5,000 gift certificate, a 2022 BMW, buying a cars. So all of this was thing. So in the report, Miss Grant was a subordinate and vulnerable victim to predators, not a consenting and willing participant. This goes back again to when Vince McMahon first met her. She was in a vulnerable position, facing bankruptcy that had gone when her parents passed away. She was looking after both of her parents that passed away, and they have said in this report that Mrs. Grant was groomed and coerced by Miss Grant. Miss Grant was groomed and coerced by Mr. McMahon and Laurinaitis, and the WWE stood by and facilitated others to keep Miss Grant employed by the WWE to ensure McMahon's continued sexual exploitation. Okay, that's what it's saying. It's saying that she was groomed. They're accusing Mr. McMahon and John Laurinaitis of grooming Miss Grant. And once again, we talked before, grooming, while it's normally associated with adults grooming kids, it can also be grooming vulnerable adults. And they're saying here she was a vulnerable victim. In addition to that, Miss Grant and her medical providers who examined her following the abuse will testify to there is ample other evidence Miss Grant's mental state and her attempts to avoid the unfortunate circumstances she found herself in. So here we go. Here's some examples of times she's tried to get out. Miss Grant sent a message to resident managers. So this is who she said, saying that she was miserable at WWE. I assume the resident manager is the person that introduced her. I don't say it to Vince as I'm grateful for my job and salary. I'm actually miserable, mismanaged all the time. They admit they don't know what to do with me. No one give a shit when I was harassed and retaliated against to the point my reputation was questioned and my work was taken away. Let's alleged herein. Let's go through this. We've seen a lot of the texts or the accused texts. Let's go, for instance, March strings. Sorry, I'm just going to fly through this because it's all sort of supporting evidence, really. But I don't think as many details are given. Mrs. Grant's inquired. It's because it's corporate officer number 1 and corporate officer number 2. It's hard to sort of keep up with who it is, to be perfectly honest. Right, so this is interesting. Additionally, corporate officer number 3, another high-ranking official and member of the board of directors at the time of Miss Grant's employment, mentioned for Miss Grant to sit in a chair near the office at the boardroom table during one of the meetings, upon information and belief that the officer knew of other instances of McMahon engaging in inappropriate sexual conduct. So if this does come out, then there might be a lot of people speaking up. Okay. And if he's kicked out the company, then they won't have to hide it anymore. That's an interesting thought for you all. Let me have a look because he first. Oh, so this is talking about McMahon's abuse of Miss Grant did not come as a surprise to anyone at WWE because he'd faced numerous allegations of sexual misconduct before, including in 1994, the former WWE referee, would have been WWF at the time, Rita Chatterton, alleged that McMahon had raped her after luring her into a limousine to discuss her career. She recounted it for New York Magazine. I was forced into oral sex with Vince McMahon. When I couldn't complete his desires, he got really angry, started ripping off my jeans, pulled me on top of him, and told me again that if I wanted a $500,000 a year contract, that I had to satisfy him. He could make or break me if I didn't satisfy him. I was blackballed. That was it. I was done. Okay, so that's a report that she said for New York Magazine. This isn't necessarily evidence. This would be well, it will go in as evidence to show prior behavior. But unless we were to get Rita Chatterton and sort of investigate that case individually, I don't know how the court or jury will deal with that. In February 2006, the Palm Beach Post reported that McMahon had shown nude pictures of himself to a tanning booth attendant, and subsequently made unwelcome advances and finally cornered her into a tanning booth and groped her. Okay, so another accusation from 2006. A former spa manager at California Resort accused McMahon of assault at the resort in 2011. I don't think any of them went to court. May have NDAs against them. I don't know. And this is just to talk about the sexual misconduct that's happened with Vince McMahon in the past, and basically they're trying to say he's got a history of this. Circumstances surrounding the NDA, it's an invalidity and McMahon and WWE's disregard, right? So this is where they're saying about the NDA that she signed was wrong. Was entered through coercive tactics. So they're saying that she was coerced into signing this. It's legally unenforceable pursuant to a federal statute and common law. Exhibit A attached here to is a true and accurate copy of the NDA. The NDA violates the Speak Out Act and is thus unenforceable. So this is what her lawyers are going to argue. The NDA is also void and unenforceable because of the confidentiality term. A core term is overly broad on its face. As written, it would prevent Miss Grant from saying anything to anyone about WWE or her employment there, which of course she would need to do to apply for a job, for example, let alone exposing McMahon and other sexual assaults and abuse of Miss Grant. The NDA that McMahon has used to silence other women may be equally unenforceable if the same language was used. So these lawyers here are wanting more to come out. They are wanting more to come out. We can read it right there. Miss Grant, and that had given more to the case. If other people saw this and went, "Oh wow, she's really serious about doing it," maybe I'll go with it as well. Maybe it could become a bigger case. I don't know. And then it's just about proving that these accusations are correct. Miss Grant was moreover coerced into signing the NDA merely 8 days after she first spoke to an attorney who Mr. McMahon initially approved of and then cautioned Ms. Grant against trusting before she was railroaded into rejecting all of her own attorney's comments. This occurred because of the relentless pressure, including implicit and explicit threats by McMahon. The NDA did not even include basic terms she was promised by McMahon, including that he would pay for her lawyers, medical care, and taxes. Regardless, even if it was enforceable, McMahon has breached a core term of the NDA. He has paid $1 million, but failed to make further payments. We did say this NDA was for $3 million, including the installment of $500,000 that was paid within 10 days of February the 1st under Section VB of that agreement. Okay. Furthermore, circumstances have changed in Miss Grant's name has now been publicly released through no fault of her own, which impacts employment prospects and has led to further trauma and humiliation. So they're saying that this has come out now. This is why she's doing it, and that whole section there states why they can do it, why the NDA is not enforceable, or why they believe that the NDA is not enforceable. Ms. Grant's laughed after this abuse and resulting damages. So, yeah, saying that she was subjected to countless depraved and humiliating acts, which has left to permanent trauma. She's been further traumatized by having to relive those experiences when giving evidence to the government in connection with their investigation of WWE. If this is a civil action case, read what that says. She has been further traumatized by having to relive those experiences when giving evidence to the government in connection with their investigations to WWE. There's no reason to write that unless it's a lie. That tells us right there that the government is currently investigating WWE. There's no point in lying about that because it'd just be disproved if needed to be. Tell me when I'm telling lies. Indeed, Miss Grant's trauma. No one's really talking about that. That's pretty big. I don't know what other government. No one's talking about the fact that the government are investigating the WWE at the minute, are they? Are they? Am I missing something here? That's huge that no one else is talking about. Maybe this 2.5-hour stream was worth doing. Indeed, Miss Grant's trauma. Today she lives on with anxiety, depression, fear of PTSD. Miss Grant was terminated from employment in her next job because she couldn't leave her home anymore. She's suffering from PTSD. The severe restrictions have created a wedge. Cause of action, Miss Grant will prove at trial she will need lifelong treatment because of the pain and suffering inflicted upon her by the defendants. If this is true, then it absolutely could be. Okay. Count 1, declaratory NDA avoided under the Speak Out Act against McMahon. Plaintiff right. So we don't have the Speak Out right with us right now. Speak Out Act defines a sexual dispute or a dispute involving a non-consensual act. Sexual harassment, tribal to Speak Out Act. Sorry, let me just get my head around all this with respect to sexual assault, sexual harassment, non-disclosure. Okay, so that's all legal terms onto the speaking out and how it breaks the end by air. The allegations herein include sexual harassment and assault disputes as defined by the Speak Out Act, and the NDA seeks to bar the claims brought herein. Okay. Count to... So I think we've sort of... Is there anything else to read here? This is all sort of evidence as to... What's that? Count 3, violation of TVP. Plaintiff includes from out of state for the purpose of exploiting. Sorry, guys, just give me 1 second to sort of read through all this and see if there's anything that's not sort of already said, because I think it did a really good job of explaining the timeline to us all. In the, I mean, this was a really well written report, I'd say. Whether it's true or not is for someone else to decide, but I think it was really descriptive of what happens. I think it's damning. I think it's hella damning. What do you guys think? I see McMahon showed numerous WWE employees sexually explicit photos and videos of Miss Grant. If the government get involved and they start questioning people about this, that could be damaging, man. Which demonstrates the knowledge of those specific employees. And we should all be better than that, right? If someone's showing us that abuse, like, we should stop it. We should say something. We should say no. So they're saying that they benefited from the sex act venture orchestrated by McMahon, including having wrestling talent sign new contracts that they talked about, who we assume would be Brock Lesnar. Saying that she's suffered damages. Miss Grant's injuries and damages were caused by negligence of WWE, its employees and agents, and whose negligence WWE is liable in the following ways. WWE, by commission and omission, allowed and tolerated sexual assault and humiliation and fostered a culture in which such acts would be tolerated. When the boss is the guy being accused, you can say that it did create that culture. WWE, by commission and omission, retained McMahon and Laurinaitis despite actual knowledge of their propensity to entice, recruit, force, or coerce women into sexual acts based on the promise of hiring jobs. That's what she's accusing them of in here. And they're saying that WWE has failed to protect the workforce by keeping them in a job. WWE has failed to warn Ms. Grant of the risk of harm to which she was subjected while employed by WWE. Civil battery against McMahon and the WWE. This is where she talks about the oral sex act that was talked about in the case. McMahon persisted, verbalized his roleplay fantasy, pretending to be the WWE superstar. Miss Grant begged for the encounter to stop multiple times, including "Help! I'm serious and I'm scared." Pulled her hair, pinned her, shoved her, open palm, fisted, penetrated. Not nice, man. We read this in the previous bite. So I think that this is all sort of going through the counts and going through what's relevant within the rest of the case. I think that's how these court papers work, but I'm not a lawyer. And then we see it's submitted on the 25th day of January, so one day ago. We can also see the lawyers involved as well there, and the attorneys for Janel. So there we go. I'm exhausted, actually, after that. It's horrible. It's a horrible, horrible circumstance. And I wanted to come on here and go through that report because I didn't feel that enough were going through that. And it's horrific. And I hope that something does happen to stop this from happening in the future and to make other companies realize no matter how big you are, no matter who you are, as we're seeing in today's culture, where we're seeing multiple people, the Weinstein case, for example, who are powerful people within the world, and Epstein, and they are getting found out, and they are being brought to justice, as should be. We have no right to do any of what has happened, and my heart goes out to Miss Grant because it is honestly horrific. I'm going to end it here, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a really hard chat, but it's been so good to have you all in here, keeping it cool and listening to me. I hope. I mean, I know you didn't enjoy it, but there we are. Thank you all. I'm going to put a post in the description. This is the lads are talking about Royal Rumble predictions. I'm going to be back for Royal Rumble tomorrow, so do come and join me if you are joining us for the first time. If you watch this in the future, Jesus, and you got through 2.5 hours of that, if this stream's allowed to be up in the future, thank you. Subscribe to the channel. I cover AEW Dynamite every week. The lads cover other shows, and we do it all here. I'm going to go, and we'll be back to talk about this, I'm sure, in the future. Let's hope. Let's hope something's done that makes this a better place. The world, that is. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thanks. Bye.